Alrighty, so it's a little cold, little chilly. As soon as the office heats up a bit, I'll be able to take this outer coat off. Oh, I didn't fix something. Sorry, I'm running just a little behind today. I had to drive into town. Had to get another blood draw. I'm I'm really getting tired of blood draws. Uh, really, really am. I'm a little disenfranchised with the whole ripping blood out of me every couple of weeks, but they're still trying to tweak my medicine. I take an injectable medicine every 2 weeks. They're trying to get that leveled out right. You know, I need it for the quality of life. It helps mitigate some of the pain. And it's funny because the fact that I was at the hospital this morning leads me into like the really big shenanigans. 1 second. I don't like how that. That's better. So, if you're not familiar with all the details of the government shutdown earlier this year, don't know why that's still on cogwheel. Earlier this year, we had that big government shutdown, and it was about the Democrats didn't like the fact that COVID era Obamacare credits were expiring. Now, healthcare in America is probably one of the most volatile topics that you can start to engage with, because people are very, very polarized on the idea of healthcare as a human right. There's a lot of philosophies on, is healthcare a basic human right or is it a privilege? Part of the problem becomes who pays for it. And you're going to see a lot of people start talking about, like, it would only cost us 2.4 to 3 point some odd trillion a year to give everybody health care, but we spend like 4.6 trillion a year on health care, and that's only servicing a part of the industry. I don't know where people get these numbers that it would only cost 3 trillion to give everybody in America free health care. When you have this many people, okay, you have this many people in America, you're saying that you only think it's going to cost $1,000 a year for people's health care? Because just $10 a year makes that 3.4 billion. $100 a year makes it 34 billion, right? Or 10, 100, 1,000, 340 billion. So it'd be 10,000. I don't think people realize how expensive medical care is, because, and people are like, oh, well, doctors don't need to make what they make. Yes. Okay. I agree. Doctors on paper don't need to make $100,000 a year. I get that. A general practitioner, PCM, just a general MD making $100,000 a year doesn't necessarily have to be that way. If and only if we reduce the cost that it takes for them to become a doctor. Like, if you have somebody that has $2.5 million in medical school debt, they need to make a significant amount of money because they need to pay back their debt. I get it. Yes, having access to a doctor, in my opinion, is a basic human right. Everybody should have access to a doctor. I don't see an argument where you can say people don't have the right to a doctor. The real problem comes in, and certain people that I know share this opinion. What do you do with a person who wants. So it starts at the medical school pricing. Yeah, it has to go all the way back to the medical school pricing. But where it has to start is, so you have 340 million people in America. And the unrealistic idea of giving universal health care is this. You're going to need an awful lot of general practitioners. Let's say every doctor, let's just do some common sense math here. Let's say every doctor works 40 hours a week. And inside of an hour, and let's say they work 45 hours a week. They're at the job 45 hours a week, but they see patients for 40 hours a week. Well, let's say they see 4 patients an hour. That means they have 160 slots per week. So that's going to be 640 slots per month. And realistically, not everybody gets sick every month. So we can take that 640 and we can times it by 3. And you figure a doctor can have 1,920 patients on their empanelment. So we'll do 340 million divided by 2,000. You would need 170,000 general practitioners. What do they even base the $1,000 per person on? Do they assume that a large portion of the population is healthy to begin with, so they won't get a ton of appointments? They base it on a bunch of bullshit. That's the problem. They base it on a wag, a wild ass guess. You said, my question is, why can countries with half of our GDP per capita afford universal health care and their population is happier with the health care than we are? Well, you've got 2 problems there. Number one, name me a country that has universal health care that's 100%, that 100% of their population is happier with their health care. And I'm going to tell you right now, you don't have to bother because it doesn't exist. Because rich Europeans don't get their emergency health care in Europe. Rich Europeans come to America and pay cash. Rich Canadians come to America and pay cash because they need something right now. It's kind of like the girl in Canada. The girl in Canada has a spinal tumor and she needs an MRI on her brain because they think she now has brain cancer. Or they go to their own private health centers. It's not like we don't have them, but let's be honest. We don't have to turn this into a European versus American dick measuring contest. Let's be honest. The best doctors in the world are in America. The best medical centers in the world are in America. We do one thing really, really well, and that's we produce doctors. We don't produce enough of them. We just produce the best in the world. Shit. Lots of doctors in other countries studied in America, went back to their country. And then after a couple of years, they realized, well, shit, I could go back to America and make 4 times as much. But you are right. That is a good point. You do have private healthcare centers. But even your private healthcare centers, they're like, it might still be a month. Meanwhile, Scrooge McDuck says, I need to get treated. And pops over to America and is like, hey, I need to get treated for this. And they're like, well, we don't have any openings until for 30 days. And Scrooge McDuck says, what is it your hospital needs most? And the hospital director's like, well, our big new fundraising push is we need a pediatric cardiac surgery suite. He's like, and how much is that going to cost? Well, he's like, how about I give you $5 million towards it? You name it after me and I see the doctor tomorrow morning. The medical director is like, Dr. So-and-so suddenly has an opening on their schedule tomorrow. And I don't think it's right. And I'm not saying it's right, but I'm saying we know that's the way it is. These countries can afford universal health care because the U.S. pays for the defense budget. In a way, yes. But what Europeans don't understand is, yeah, your defense spending is 4%. That's awesome. That's awesome. Sweden doesn't defend itself on 4% of its GDP. Let's just cut the shit and let's not try to turn it into something it's not. We spend 25% on our defense spending so all of our allies can sleep peaceably at night. And that's a stupid flex for an American to make, but it's reality. The rest of the world can get away with spending single digits because we're spending double digits. And what people don't, they'll do the quick Google search and it'll say, oh, well, only this much is directed towards your national defense. Only that much is directed towards mandatory spending on national defense. And then throughout the year, you'll get all this operational money, all this operational fallout money. I feel like we could put far more into preventative care and save everyone money. Like in Japan, they can get a full body MRI for $200. Sure, but what does a full body MRI tell you? And I want to remind you, it's 250 to 700 USD, but it's 40,000 to 100,000 in their currency. But what does a full body MRI tell you? And do you realize we don't have the capacity to give everybody a full body MRI in America? We simply don't. We don't have the capacity to do that. I got an X-ray on my thumb because I thought I dislocated it. I'm still waiting for the MRI appointment because we don't have enough MRI machines. Europe does not go into double-digit spending to beat Russia, to be fair. That's basically all we have to worry about. Salty Bread, here's the piece that you need to take a step back and look at. If the United States stopped its global operations, Europe would have more terrorism in Europe. Because our global operations, we don't go when the United States is out globally hunting terrorists. We're not out only looking for terrorists that want to fuck us up. We're out looking for terrorists who's going to fuck everybody up. Europe, and the reverse is true as well, but Europe benefits from our global war on terrorism. We benefit from Europe's war on terrorism. Although Europe benefits more than we do because we have the advantage of, for Middle Eastern terrorists can literally walk from the Middle East to Europe. There's not a great ocean divide. It's a long trip, but they can walk it. They can boat it. They can ferry it. You can get from Northern Africa to Southern Europe on a ferry. You can come across as a regular tourist if you have the right paperwork. And Europe, no offense to Europe, but Europe is really, really kind of lax in its security. If you have the right paperwork, you have once you have an EU passport, EU credentialing, you go through without a second look. I understand why you did it. Your countries are the size of our states, and I get it. But that makes you more vulnerable to terrorism. It's like somebody from St. Louis gets in a car, drives across the bridge to East St. Louis, does a shooting in Illinois. Same sort of deal. The other problem is European countries. Yeah, it depends on the border, depends on the person, depends on the credentialing. But for some people, once you're in Europe, you cross through freely. Yeah, they have customs, but you have one line for people with expedited customs and one people for scrutinized customs. EU citizen, hey, come on in, have a party, have a beer, have a schnitzel. But the problem becomes Europeans pay more taxes than Americans do. Right off the bat, Europeans have anywhere between a 1 and a 22% VAT. Most places in America, our sales tax, 10.25% is the upper ceiling, right? we don't have very many places in America where the sales tax is above 10 and a quarter. In Europe, countries routinely have 18, 19, 20, 21, 22% on all the products. Well, why is that? Because that's how they pay for services. Remember, people keep using the word Europe has free healthcare. Europe doesn't have free healthcare. Europe has government provided healthcare. It's like the people saying, people like to take numbers and extrapolate those numbers. And they say, well, the average American only pays $34 of their taxes. Only $34 goes to SNAP. Okay. Well, if you're going to make that argument, then I'll make the argument of, well, then that sounds an awful lot like government-directed charity, and I'll keep my $34, thank you, and I'll stock my local food pantry, because now what you've done is you've created an argument that creates a counterfactual. You've created an advocacy. I wonder how much of a percentage of your income you spend on insurance in the U.S. on average. Unfortunately, that specific question can't be answered because you're going to get a number, but that number doesn't tell the story. We could dig into that number, but what you have to realize is I had insurance through an employer and I paid nothing for it. So my contribution to my insurance, my employer, for all of the executives, they paid 100% of your insurance. Why? Because when you pay me, I pay tax on what you pay me. Now, of course, you have pre-tax contributions to things like your retirement fund, but that you get paid, then you pay your insurance. Well, I'd rather not get paid then. Pay me $800 a month less and pay my insurance directly for me, would you? That would be great. That way it doesn't reflect as earnings to me that I immediately now kick out. Because remember, you get a standard deduction. Unless you're in a really, really unique case as an American, you take the standard deduction, which I think is now $29,500. It's irrelevant to me. I don't have earned income. So I don't want to earn that money. I have a point I honestly don't understand. If you classify the Houthis and Hezbollah as terrorists, why not attack Iran and end the spread of this danger in the Middle East region? We did attack Iran. I think you missed the point where the United States just did attack Iran and blew up one of their enrichment facilities and said, stop funding terrorists. Sounds like a total mess. It is a total mess. It is a total mess. The problem is, there's no simple way to solve it. The simplest way to solve it is we need to make medical school cheaper so that we can have more doctors. If we have more doctors, then there's more availability. Supply goes up, demand remains the same, price comes down. The other problem is insurance companies. I'm in the middle of a big hoopla with an insurance company because they're doing what's known as balance billing. Now, my daughter has TRICARE. So for those of you that are familiar with how insurance works, my daughter goes to the doctor. When she walks into the doctor's office, she gives the doctor $25. This is her copay. This is a dollar amount collected at the time of service by the provider. Now, my daughter has a $450 appointment. She's got to have a physical, and then she's got to have an x-ray. She gets all that x-ray minus the $25. The doctor's office bills the insurance for $425. The insurance company says, it's great that you think your services were worth $425. However, we have agreed in the past that we will pay you $184. We will go line by line and we will say this is the maximum allowable. So now there's this $241 that's just not going to get paid. Now, they're supposed to just zero that out, knowing that they don't have any right to that money. But what this new billing company's trying to do is they're on the sly sending a bill for the $241. Well, I called them and I said, hey, politely, you can't do that. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if you have new people. I don't know if you haven't read the contract. You can't do this. This is illegal. This is called balance billing. It's against the law. It's against the 2022 law. It's against the TRICARE contract. 30 days later, they bill me again. So I called and I asked to speak to a supervisor, and the supervisor literally said to me, well, who do you think is going to pay the $241? I said, I don't know, but it doesn't exist because you charged me more than the contract allows. Then they billed me again, and then they tried to cancel one of my daughter's appointments. So I had to call up the military food chain until I got to the assistant director of the health service agency. That person who works in DC calls the local hospital and says, what precisely are you doing? They said, well, somebody has to pay the $241. Well, luckily that person from the Pentagon was able to say to the hospital, do you want us to pull our contract and give it to the hospital across the street? Because we can do that. All of a sudden now I'm getting calls from everybody on high at the hospital and the insurance agency, at the billing department, because they're trying to get this resolved. Well, the resolution was stop breaking the law. But think about how much shenanigans there is in that. Two people go into the hospital to get an x-ray, right? For you, you don't have the same level of insurance. So for you, the x-ray is $375. And for my daughter, the x-ray is $96. How is that fair? And even more, how does that work? Are you taking a loss on this x-ray? Does the x-ray really cost $125 to maintain the machine, the electricity used to run the machine, the radiology tech that takes the x-ray, the radiologist who interprets the x-ray? Does it take $125 per x-ray? So are you taking $129 loss on this one? So you're charging this other schlep so much more money to cover the loss? And the people that end up not paying? Like, while I was waiting in line to check in for my blood draw, maintenance costs, yeah. But salty bread, there is a number in medical equipment. There is a dollar amount broken down per x-ray. And I used to have all these numbers and these facts and figures. You know that you have 7,500 x-rays. You can cycle the x-ray machine 7,500 times between maintenances. And so you know how much money you have to make in those 7,500 x-rays to pay for the machine, all the particulars. So you know how much that is. So it's a fixed amount. Why is it variable based on the patient and their insurance? It sucks. If you lose your job, you lose your health insurance. You also have to use the doctors that take your employer's plan. Yeah. And this is why there's no simple answer to universal health care that fixes it for people today. There's a simple answer for universal health care, that a 30-year plan, but in order for it to be right by 2055, we have to start making changes today. Like, for example, kids should be like the way we do public school doesn't foster an environment of producing the number of doctors we need. We have kids that are really interested in biology, chemistry, anatomy, well, let me back up a second. The average kid doesn't even start anatomy and physiology until high school. Anatomy and physiology, you generally don't get into that in grade school biology. You get a little bit of it in some states. Like my state has a mandatory sexual familiarization, Aaron's law, blah, blah, blah. They have to do explanations of the anatomy, whatever, but you don't really get into it in earnest until high school biology. Well, if you have a kid in high school who says, I want to be a doctor, who tests high aptitude for chemistry, science, anatomy, why is that kid not put into a pre-med track program? To go beyond that, why do we have pre-med and then med school where a future doctor gets the same 4-year degree as a social studies teacher, as a lawyer, as a gym teacher, as a criminologist, as a meteorologist, as an astrologist, as a computer science major? Why are we filling a future doctor's head with art appreciation, U.S. history? Give them a course, the history of medicine. Why do they need to have U.S. history, world history? Give them the history of medicine. Well, because remember, colleges were designed to make people cosmopolitan, to have a world of a world exposure. They knew a little bit about this and a little bit about that. We don't need generalists anymore. We could cut down the cost pipeline of med school by 15 to 20% by just getting rid of the muda, the chowder, the fodder in their undergraduate. Look, I don't want you taking, I don't need you taking the art appreciation. I don't need you taking a foreign language. I don't need you taking philosophy. I need you taking ethics, morals, values, but I need you to take general ethics, morals, and values, and then I need you to take medical ethics, morals, and values. Like, for example, it was done in a TV show, but it's kind of similar. You lost a medical instrument. As long as you haven't finished sewing up the patient and taking them out of the operating room, you can open up all their stitches, find the instrument you lost, and then re-sew them up, and you never even have to report it because you didn't finish the surgery. But if you finish the last suture, take them out of the room, and then bring them back in because you're missing an instrument, that's a completely different process. Well, it shouldn't be. The patient should be told that they started getting sewn up and a scalpel was left in them. Like, if you're not aware of this in an operating room, they know exactly how many instruments they have, and they're counting them all the time. You're putting them back in a certain, like, you're not putting them back on the same trays. You're putting them on the used tray, keeping clean and used away from each other, but you're keeping them, it's like they're not just throwing them on the floor in a pile. They're keeping them in a trackable order so they know. They've also stopped bringing in things they're not going to need in the surgery. They don't bring in the 500-piece kit anymore. If they need 200 items for the surgery, they have 200 items and then spares available. But we need to change healthcare. We need to change, like, people should not be dying because they don't have access to insulin. Like, are we fucking serious? People are dying because they don't have access to insulin? Insulin is allowed to remain the price it is because of the monopoly that the pharmaceutical companies have. And then Walmart came out and started selling insulin for $25. Now, is the European model better than the American model? No, it's not better. Somebody said we got to do more with preventative maintenance. You're right. We do have to do better with preventative maintenance. It's just like we have trained an entire society of people to be really, really dumb. My daughter tried out for the bowling team. Bowling is January to April 15th. My daughter's physical is April 26th. The school calls and caused a big hoopla. They said your daughter's not going to be allowed to go to bowling tryouts because her physical's not current. No, her physical is current. Her physical is current until April 26th. Well, we need the physical to go through the sports season. It does. The nurse is like, well, it's not from this year. Are you just making things up now? Your first thing is that it's not current. It is current. Second is it has to go through the season. It does. Now it's not because it's not on the 2026 form. Then how did my kids start the school year? How was my child able to start the school year on this physical? And the nurse has no earthly idea. Because it didn't matter in September. You got kids. My big concern is I don't respect anti-vaxxers. I respect your right to have a choice. Your right to have a choice. I do not respect anti-vaxxers when they say the pharmaceutical companies are just billing us an astronomical amount of money for kids' vaccines. Kids' vaccines aren't even that expensive. Then they say, well, I don't believe it works. But what more evidence do you want? Now, the COVID vaccine, I don't agree with the COVID vaccine. I do not agree with the COVID vaccine. I've just been reading more and more stuff because I'm impacted by it. People that got the COVID vaccine having heart problems. I've been reading all that research because I'm impacted by that. My heart is healthy, but I have nerve damage around my heart. Did the vaccine cause it? Did the vaccine cause this neuropathy problem I have in my hands and my feet? I don't know. But we know for a fact that measles, mumps, rubella, the chickenpox vaccines, Sweden, I'll use Sweden in this case, they tracked 650,000 children over a 20-year span. And the difference between autism in kids who got vaccinations and kids who didn't get vaccinations is less than 0.2%. And in the report, they indicate that the reason why the kids who got the vaccine are indicating higher could also possibly be the disproportionate ratio of kids who don't have the vaccine not being in the school system. Like, I made it through all of elementary school, all of high school, all of college, all of grad school, and not once did anybody ever come to me and say, you might be neurodivergent. I made it through 19 years of education, and nobody ever said, hey, he's autistic as fuck. I was labeled as antisocial. Well, we're not dying of the plague anymore, so vaccines have to be doing something. You're right. Except we are dying of shit that could be prevented by vaccines. We have measles outbreaks in America. We have measles outbreaks. The dangerous part is kids are getting measles because other parents aren't vaccinating their vaccine-eligible children, so the kids who aren't old enough to get the vaccine are contracting it because it's everywhere. Now, when people say, "Oh, well, if you don't want to get sick, don't leave your house." I don't want to get sick, and you're the one who's sick. Why don't you stay in your house? It's like the lady at Disney World. When I was at Disney, I got sick. I got COVID and I got impetigo. I would never wish impetigo on anybody. Impetigo is horrible. I still had to drive home from Orlando with COVID and impetigo. Let me tell you, I was not a happy camper. Another lady was at Disney, called Advent Health Services to come to her room. They came to her room, told her she had COVID, and then told her, you can't go into the parks now because you have COVID. But we have school districts that, now school districts say a kid only has to quarantine from COVID for 24 hours. My daughter got really sick, and of course, my daughter's immune compromised. I had to go to the school because my daughter got sick. And I said, excuse me, I'm not asking you for any information. I'm going to give you a bunch of information, and then you need to look into it. This boy came to school having tested positive for strep and influenza. How was he allowed to return to school after 24 hours, but he wasn't fever-free? Yet my daughter is sickly, so you're taking her temperature all the time, and you want us to keep her at home when she's got a common cold. She's got the sniffles. She's running a degree hot. You want us to keep her home, yet the doctor's office, the note excusing the boy says he's got strep and influenza B, and the doctor said he can't return to school for 3 days, and the note got sent to you, and you still let the kid stay. The nurse's response was, well, we knew he shouldn't have been in school, but we couldn't reach the parents to pick him up, but we did keep him out of school for the other 2 days. Said, yeah, that didn't do any good because he was in a classroom and he got my daughter sick. Because nobody wants, like, schools have become daycares. And when we're talking about health, you can't get a same-day appointment for your kid anymore because the system is saturated. The military used to have a great thing. It was called sick call. I remember being a baby airman and then a baby sergeant. Got up one morning. I felt like crap. I worked at the hospital. I showed up an hour early before my shift. I walked in, got in line, and it's literally just squares on the ground with numbers in them. Step into the square. The doctor comes by with a mask, and he's like, what's wrong with you? I don't feel good. Scratchy throat? No. Step back. Scratchy throat? Yes. Scratchy throat? No. Eyes, ears. Step forward. Da-da-da. If you stepped forward, as the doctor walked, they had a person taking notes next to the doctor. Then the next person came up, and without having to go anywhere, I'm in the hallway. The person's like, open up. And they did the swab of the back of my throat. Then they walked off and they said, you have a seat in seating area 1. They're not going to do anything else until they do my strep test. So I'm there. People are coming to seating 1, seating 2, and seating 3. The people in 2, the doctor was like seeing them real quick and telling them pick up a goodie bag. Goodie bag has your has your decongestant, your Dayquil, your NyQuil, your cough syrup. They're just already in bags. As you're leaving, they scan your ID, you take a goodie bag. If you're getting tested for strep, doctor came out and he's like, you have strep, go to the pharmacy, your prescription is there. You have to be off work for 48 hours quarters. We'll send the quarters paperwork to your work center. Go home. And when you're military, you're no on quarters. Quarters means you only place you can stop is if you're getting food, and then you go home. Well, why can't we have that in more places? Why can't we have the hospital run more like that? Run more like an acute center? Well, because then people are going to be like, well, I don't want to be swabbed in the hallway when everybody else can see me. It's a fucking throat swab. Ain't like the doctor's telling you to drop your pants and spread them in the hallway in front of everybody else. It's a throat swab. People talk about we spend all these trillions of dollars on medical care in America. And I get it, we do. But you know where the problem comes in? Is a lot of people go to the emergency room. They go to the emergency room for routine care needs. Well, if you go to the emergency room for a routine care need, what should be a $125 visit at your doctor's office is a $1,000 visit. I don't think that is a fair number to use and say, if we're spending $4 trillion a year on healthcare, we could treat everybody for $2.4 trillion, because the answer is no, we couldn't. We did the number a little bit earlier. 340 million Americans, right? And each doctor can have 2,000 patients impaneled to them. So if you want every person living in America to have a PCM, a primary care manager, you're going to need 170,000 primary care managers. And if we pay each of them $100K a year just on primary care managers, we're at $17 billion already on just PCMs. Now, we take this number and we triple it, and that covers the med tech, the nurse, the medical paperwork admin person. We're at $51 billion right off the bat, just so people can see a doctor who's a general practitioner. Coughs, sneezes, runny noses, simple breaks, simple strains. Well, not breaks because, well, and not even sprains because you need an x-ray to go with that. But we're at 50, people are like, oh, it'd be so easy. Really? Well, I'm at $51 billion before I even get you out of a PCM's office. You wanna have and remember, if you suddenly now make it so everybody has a PCM, well, what does this PCM got to do? Blood, urine tests, radiography, radiographic diagnostics, right? That right there, this is going to be way more than 51 billion a year, because you can't have, otherwise you get Europe, you get Canada. So it's great. You got everybody, 100% of the Americans can go see a PCM. But it's 6 months if you need an MRI. Well, how'd you help the system then? You didn't help the system at all. 10% of medical expenses in the US is also spent on obesity-related issues. I think it's more than that, actually. I believe it's a lot more than that. I believe it is way more than 10%. One study I read is that $1 trillion a year is going towards obesity and obesity-related illnesses. So you have pneumonia, but you have pneumonia and you have to be treated differently because you're obese. Well, all of that then becomes secondary to obesity. I think it's $1 trillion a year. How much do you think it costs with every doctor, hospital to have people deal with bureaucracy of dealing with all the different health insurances? Also, we pay for health insurance companies to make a profit for their CEOs and such. Well, here's the deal. You're absolutely right. We do pay for insurance companies to have a CEO. But people need to stop using a broadsword when they chop up the problem with CEOs, and they need to use a scalpel. Every organization has a CEO. Every organization. Your family has a CEO. Mom, dad, kids, mom or dad. I don't care if they say we make the decisions equally. They do not. One of them has the final say. Whoever has the final say is the chief executive. They may not use that title, but they are the ones that that have the final say on a matter. The military, we don't have a CEO. We have a general. We have a highest ranking officer. Even a general has a CEO. Secretary of War. Secretary of War has a CEO. The president, right? The senior most person anywhere is the CEO. Just because that person isn't dealing with the patients directly, the beneficiaries directly, doesn't mean the CEO is not an important role. Where I agree with people is how much value to the insurance company is the CEO bringing that warrants him needing an $18 million a year salary. Now, as far as how much do you think it costs every doctor, hospital to have to deal with the bureaucracy of dealing with all the different health insurances? That is why a lot of doctors don't take all insurances. I have a doctor friend, doesn't take Medicare, doesn't take Medicaid. Why? Doesn't want to deal with the shenanigans. Does not take Medicare, does not take Medicaid. Because that is a boatload of paperwork. My cousin didn't want to take Medicare and Medicaid until they got approached and they got paid a flat sum of money to open up their empanelment to Medicare and Medicaid recipients. I think it was Medicaid specifically. And that's another talking point why universal health care in this country, why I'm not excited about this article. In a stunning blow to Speaker Mike Johnson, 4 Republican lawmakers agreed to back a Democratic push to extend pandemic-era subsidies. By signing up the Democrat procedural movement to force a floor vote, their proposed 3-year extension of ACA tax credits, he now has the 218 signatures needed to guarantee a vote under discharge petition rules. That floor vote cannot be forced until January. These 4 have criticized the plan as flawed, but in a sign of desperation, the typical leadership-aligned centrist chose to defy Johnson and sign on to the push rather than allow the subsidies to expire at year's end. Well, here's the problem. If the vote doesn't go through until January and the subsidies have ended, number one, the House, and I don't know the particular bill, the vote in January may be completely symbolic because some things, and again, I'd have to know the exact bill, the exact funding lines, the exact color of money, the exact stipulation. Come here. Why are you crying? Dina. She's out there pouting because I was gone, and she's out there pouting. She's chirping like a bird, pouting at me. Hey, Loki. Maybe this program can have funding reinitiated. Maybe it can't. I don't know. Hold on, somebody's contacting me about their so their social security's getting fucked with. I don't know if damn obesity costs were 1.4 trillion, so probably worse now. Oh yeah, obesity costs are ridiculous. The problem here is extending the Affordable Care Act, the Obamacare Act, in the House. The Senate is probably going to vote it down anyway. But the problem is Obamacare didn't create a solution, it created the problem. It's the same, if you remember about a year ago, Joe Biden said he was going to work to pass a law that capped landlords' abilities to raise the rent to 5%. So what you're saying is you're telling landlords to raise their rent 5% every year until the market can't bear it anymore. The idea of government control on some things just doesn't work. Why do insurance companies get away with doing the things they do? Because they're allowed to. As I've said, we need to change our our entire modality. Hold on. Oh, hold on. Damn, obesity costs, yeah. So how do you, as I've said, the oh yeah, that's the point I was trying to make. Sorry, somebody's getting fucked with on their social security and I'm trying to help them too. We have the VA. We have Medicare. We have Medicaid. We have TRICARE. And these programs don't work right. So why is it Americans, everybody who doesn't have health care keeps saying, well, get us into get us affordable care. Well, how are you going to make that work? Because we don't even have, like, a veteran can't get taken care of at an establishment that only sees veterans. So how are you expecting to take a program that can barely handle about 5 million people? Right? This program handles about 5 million people. This program handles about 77 million. I don't know this, and this is about 1.8 plus families. As a percentage of GDP, you spend way more on healthcare than we do over here. Right. We spend more on healthcare than countries that are providing universal healthcare. But the problem is we're not taking care of everyone, we're taking care of the rich. Until we have more doctors. Like, for example, when you're in beautician school or barber school, they open to the public for the people that are ready to start seeing clientele. When you go to chiropractor school or massage therapy school, they open the school to clientele that are in the public who pay a much lower rate because they understand they're going to be a crash test dummy. Like, I need a haircut right now. I usually don't cut my hair in the month of December because it's cold as shit. Although it's going to be 70 degrees on Christmas in Southern Illinois, so I don't know what's going on. But I could go into a barber shop right now and get my hair cut for $25. Or I could go into a barber school and get my hair cut for like $5. But I have to understand that by going to the barber school, they might fuck it up. Well, why don't we use that same idea and the same mentality? And instead of, like, I don't know if you've ever had a condition where they've come to you and said, we have some medical students who have never seen this condition. Can we bring them in? I now say no. I say no, thank you. I used to cooperate. I say no now. No, thank you. Because you're not going to give me a price break. And then I feel like, because this whole side of my body is pulled down, I go into the orthopedist's office and he's like, oh, yeah, I have a medical student. They've never seen this condition. May I bring him in? No, you may not. The doctor gives me a look. He's like, well, what do you mean? I said, I'm not interested in your attention now being on your medical student. I want your attention on me. And I've just had bad experience with med students. The answer is no, I don't want to do it. The problem is we don't have a way for people to access healthcare. And we think that extending the affordable healthcare credits is going to be that thing. And while in the short term, these credits will. Where does all that extra spending go, though? Is it purely the lack of doctors driving up the prices? Or is it a crazy amount also lost in effect, inefficient bureaucracy, corruption, etc.? Well, it's a little bit of both. And as you've heard throughout time, any idea to eliminate all corruption is a waste of time because corruption will always exist. It's not about finding a person who won't take a percent. It's about finding the person that'll look you dead in the face and say, I'm going to take my 3%, but I'm only going to take my 3%. People believe that the future is in the biggest, brightest, best new technology. They've got all these wonderful, for my back and all my nerve pain, they've got all these wonderful things called like trigger point injections. And I go in and a trigger point injection session for all my shoulders and my whole spine, I'm not even exaggerating, is close to $2,500. For them to do my shoulders, my neck, and my spine, it's about $2,500. I can go to the Indian barber shop and he'll do acupuncture on my shoulders and my spine, and it's like $50 cash. And I feel better when he does it because he's doing the old school heated needles and all that. Go to the old school Indian doctor. He's got the glass cups. He takes the cotton ball, puts alcohol in it, lights it on fire, puts it in the cup, puts the cup on your back. It does cupping. He charges me like whatever, $20 for 20 cups. Meanwhile, if I go have that done at the doctor, it's like $300 because we have to have this pneumatic air pump and we have to inspect all the, you know how he inspects the glasses? He inspects them when he washes them. It's clean. It's clean. It's leaking. Throw it out. I do agree that a lot of it has to do with, remember, the reason why your lawnmower box says do not use to cut bushes is because some fool ass has used their lawnmower to cut bushes. I only support universal health care because I think it would make things more efficient. Make it so we don't rely on employers. Remove for profit. Remove maybe some bureaucracy. However, I'm concerned that Americans can do it effectively the way our politics is going. Might be best to not touch it at this point. Well, here's my question for you. Do you believe that universal health care could even function? And if you're not familiar with the VA, my PCM at the VA is here. And here's the VBA, the Veterans Benefits Administration. My PCM is here. And he sends me to see my mental health doc. And my mental health doc sees me every week. It's not like this anymore for me. I see all private doctors. But my doctor at facility 1 sends me to facility 2 to see my mental health doc. Now, while I happen to be at my mental health doc's office, my mental health doc notices that, whatever, I've broken my thumb. So he sends me for an x-ray, which he can, because they are doctors. But now, the x-ray is over here, and my PCM can't access it because my PCM is not the referring doctor, and their facility code is different. So my doctor happened to see that my thumb was messed up, sent me for an x-ray, but now my primary care manager can't access the x-ray, and it's inside of the same facility. It's inside of the same VA structure, but he didn't order it, so he can't see it. Meanwhile, my periodic review at the VA comes up if they're going to keep paying me, and they tell me, I say, oh, I've been seen here, here, and here. And they tell me it's going to be 6 to 10 months for them to accumulate all of my records. It's going to be 6 to 10 months for you to accumulate all of my records inside of the VA. Yeah, you can't just see my records. No, we have to request your records be sent to us from each facility. What the shit? What are you talking about? How can this be reality? I said, there's no way this is reality. One of my foster kids is medical admin, has worked at the VA. Yep, that's exactly how it is. We can't pull your record. We can request them to push it to us, or we can just request it. Wouldn't it make a lot of sense if the VA was structured properly? It would run like my civilian hospital does. My civilian hospital, I have to get a blood draw every 3 months. Well, yeah, I have to get a blood draw right now I got to get a blood draw every 3 months. After today's blood draw, it'll determine if it goes to every 6 weeks or stays at 3 months. My doctor sent the order for the blood draw 3 months ago, after he got the last results. I walked in today, they could see it right away. How is the civilian world able to do this so much more proficiently? 1 second. And the answer is there's no good answer. I do agree with you. Universal healthcare should make things more proficient. It would be great. It would be absolutely great if you went to the doctor. Like I'll tell you, I go to the doctor and it's working pretty well. So here's my doctor's office, and attached to my doctor's office is radiology, is outpatient radiology. So here's doc, here's outpatient radiology, here's the hospital across the street. Now, a couple of problems that I've had in the past. I was helping, or my kid and my wife were helping me move a desk, and I clipped myself on the corner of the desk about 11 o'clock in the morning. So about 11 a.m., I'm in a lot of pain. I racked myself off the desk. By about 2, I called my doctor and I said, hey, I'm having a lot of groin pain. I had an accident. I hit a desk. My doctor said, come into the office right now. I went into the office. My doc looked at me and he said, go right over to the ER. I got over to the ER. While I'm walking in, a lady kind of saw me and she kind of like looking at me and she's like, are you Jalan? I'm like, yeah, I'm Jalan. She's like, just come with me. I was like, I have to check in. She's like, no, you don't. So as I'm walking, she's getting in, she's got a clipboard. She's getting information. I went right into radiology, right into ultrasound. And literally, I was told to basically take off your pants, your boxers, and get on the table. Like we don't have time to fuck around. And I'm starting to get a little worried here. And like 3 or 4 minutes into it, a surgeon comes in. And he comes in, he's like, hi, I'm Dr. So-and-so. If I'm going to be doing your surgery if necessary. And I finally said, hey, you guys are scaring the shit out of me. What the hell's going on? And they're like, based on all of your symptoms, you could have a testicular torsion. You have to get into surgery right away. It's where you hit your testicle and you twist the connections and it gets tied. They get like wrapped in a knot and your testicle is having a stroke. It can kill you. It will absolutely kill the testicle. That's an example of a healthcare network that works. That worked spot on. Same hospital, same healthcare network is the place that I went to the ER on Sunday. I was there for 8 hours, took 4 bags, If you've taken 4 saline bags in 8 hours, you're severely dehydrated. And then they gave me magnesium and sent me home. And 2 days later, I was admitted. And that's when they apologized profusely because the resident had given me magnesium and then sent me home. I should have either been sent home or given magnesium and admitted. I shouldn't have been given magnesium and sent home because magnesium causes symptoms that then will dehydrate you again. We don't have enough quality doctors to do universal health care. We simply don't. If you're already waiting 3 months for a doctor's appointment, how do you expect to quadruple the number of people routinely seeing their doctor? Would you be able to do universal health care on a state level? We do universal health care on a state level. If you don't have health insurance and you don't make enough money to have health insurance, you go to your local state office, they put you on Medicaid. What people don't understand is there's only about 4% of Americans that fall through the cracks. There's overall, you have 92% of Americans and their healthcare needs are met. And I'm gonna put met in quotes because they're met, they just may not be met well. Of the remaining 8%, 4% qualify for Medicaid, Medicare, whatever. They just don't apply for it. The remaining 4% are the lost children. Well, the problem is in between area where they are too rich for the state sponsored but too poor for the good insurance. That's the 4%. The 4% is they make too much money to get state care for free, but they can't afford to buy private health insurance. Now, realistically, statistically speaking, I know it would really, really, really suck if you were one of the 13.6 million people who are lost in the shuffle. But trying to change the program to capture those 13.6 million people is not the solution we need. The solution we need is to fix the problem, the big picture, and then see after we do some big picture fixes, how many of those 13.6 million people did we now capture? Having regular doctors accept Medicaid doesn't necessarily fix your problem. What you need is Medicaid doctors. You need the state to run clinics. Well, what's the problem with a state-run clinic? It means anybody can go there. You have the county hospital. People go to the county hospital. They get a bill, but if they can't pay it, they can't pay it. Well, that doesn't work. You need to send them to, it's like, there's not a humane way to fix the problem, but it's like, look, you need to go register and qualify for healthcare before you come here to try to get health services. The other problem is we need to stop this idea that undocumented people, be it Americans or immigrants or illegals or whatever, can register into the Medicaid program. Because although they don't receive Medicaid monies, the state gets reimbursed. The hospital gets reimbursed by the state for procedures, for life-saving procedures it gives to undocumented people. Well, therein is a huge part of your problem. And I know some people will pull out the numbers and they'll say, but it's a relatively small dollar amount. You're right, it is a relatively small dollar amount. But every dollar of wasted money, it distorts the problem. Like, If a foreigner comes to America and has a baby and can't afford it, the hospital has to deliver the baby. And I understand the alternative is people dying. But do you know what? And again, you're like, Jay, you were talking about medicine. Why is it swinging to immigration? I don't think any problem we have in society exists purely in a vacuum. Having a baby is tens of thousands of dollars in a hospital. Now, yes, you can have a baby at home with a midwife for less than like $4,000, but I wouldn't want to. I want my children to be delivered in a hospital with every best surgeon on staff all ready to go in case my kid or my wife has a problem. But if we stopped giving citizenship to the children of parents that aren't citizens, we would get rid of an awful lot of people that are coming here, because we would be like, it's a door that shouldn't be open anyway. Hey man, how do we stop all these people from getting into the concert? Well, I don't know, close that fence over there. Well, it won't stop all of them, but it'll stop some of them. We stopped giving 14th Amendment citizenship to everybody. If one of your parents isn't a citizen and you're born here, you should not be a citizen. Period. Dot. So, real simple. Mom, dad, child. Mom, yes. Dad, yes. Child, yes. Mom, no. Dad, yes. Child, yes. Mom, yes. Dad, no. Child, yes. Mom, no. Dad, no. Child, no. This is all the only change we have to make. The only change we have to make to America to see an impact is that if you're not an American and dad's not an American, then the child's not an American. People will stop coming to America to try to have their kid. They come to America, they don't have health insurance. The hospital pays the bill. Now the kid's an American. Now people lose their mind when they try to deport mom and dad. Well, you can't deport mom and dad because then you're deporting an American. We're not deporting the American. If the parents have a responsible party they can leave the American child with, well, now you're separating families. Well, are you going to give up your spot? See, no problem in America exists in a vacuum. I've seen firsthand what happens in the immigrant neighborhoods. You have kids in public school who, and granted, public school is paid for primarily by property tax, and illegal immigrants are paying property tax because they live somewhere, and wherever the somewhere they live is taxed. Maybe not taxed accordingly. And we had in my neighborhood, we had that stereotypical Middle Eastern family with 15 of them living in one house. We knew it went on. They weren't a problem. They weren't a nuisance, but we knew it was going on. They go to the school. There's a problem with that, but I don't see a huge problem. Yeah, I see a problem with 15 kids, not 15 kids, but seven kids being registered to the same house. But we have other organizations that are supposed to be vetting that. The school is supposed to be vetting that. We need robot doctors as soon as possible. No, because you need somebody to supervise. You need somebody to supervise the robot doctor. What we need is, number one, to teach people earlier on in their education about better health hygiene. I will be the first person to say I did not have great health practices because at the time everything was good. I told you I used to run 7 to 10 miles a day, but I also drank Dr. Pepper out of a 2-liter like a 20-ounce bottle. It's like regulate our food industry better. That is a start to it. One thing I think we need to look at Europe about is if an American company has to change their ingredients to sell their product in Europe, then the FDA should say to that American company, look, you can't sell us different than what you sell Europe. So if you're changing it for Europe, you're changing it for America. Now, if you choose not to sell your product in Europe, that's fine. But if you are selling it in Europe and they've told you to change, then you have to change for us as well. Like Subway bread. Subway bread in Europe isn't bread, it's dessert because it has too much sugar. Yeah, our bread is classified as cake in Europe. I have cookbooks from Europe and I have cookbooks from America. And let me tell you, no recipes for desserts and cakes or pastries from Europe ever call for 2 cups of sugar in anything. First of all, they don't call them cups, they call them grams. Second of all, making the same peanut butter cookies in a European recipe and an American recipe, and they use 1/3 of the sugar. And the cookies are just as good. Because at a certain level of sweet, you don't need any more. But no, we've got lawmakers, and what pisses me off is this isn't a this up here isn't a fixing the problem news story. This is I want to look good for my voters. Hey, look, I'm breaking away from the Republican Party and I'm voting to keep these subsidies. Even though I know that these subsidies aren't helping. Even though we know these subsidies aren't solving the problem, they make you think that they're solving the problem. Donald Trump is making a speech at 9 p.m. Eastern tonight, and it will highlight the administration's actions this past year and the 2026 priorities. I am so tired of living in my country right now because our country is being run by a fascist dictator. Look, I don't care how much Venezuela pisses you off. You do not have the right to seize Venezuelan tankers. You do not have the right or the authority to just take what you want. The UN has to do that. It's always interesting how our news anchors sound. Yours often seem more like sports commentators bringing in their own opinions. We no longer have news broadcasters. We have op-ed. The United States used to be the news. Now, I know that news doesn't stand for notable events, whether in sports, but it certainly should have. I don't want political spin on every single thing I read or hear. Remember when they were going to take Canada, Greenland? Crazy, that was early this year. Yeah. What are the ghost ships Venezuela is using to evade oil sanctions? In a further escalation of tension between the United States and Venezuela, President Trump has ordered a naval blockade to stop sanctioned oil tankers from entering and leaving the South American country. Venezuela, which has the world's largest proven oil reserves, is highly dependent on revenue from its oil exports to finance government spending. But U.S. sanctions targeting Venezuela's state oil company have made exporting oil difficult for the Venezuelan government, leading them to resort to a fleet of ghost ships. More than 30 of the 80 ships in Venezuelan waters are approaching the country were under U.S. sanctions. It is these vessels President Trump is targeting with total and complete blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers going into and out of Venezuela. Venezuelan crude exports fell by more than half from 1.1 to 495,000 barrels a day. His speech tonight will be 50% ego stroking, 50% lies. So part of Trump's problem I think Trump honestly has I think he honestly believes he has the best intentions of part of America in mind. The problem is he doesn't have the academic background to, like, you can clearly see that he and the majority of his rabid followers don't understand tariffs because they keep talking about how great the tariffs are because other countries are paying the tariffs. But other countries don't pay American tariffs. The only way other countries pay American tariffs are if a foreign company is the one that's importing it. And they're still going to pass the price on to the consumer anyway. Are we using taxpayer money and our kids to fight for oil companies? No. Like, people made all these claims for years and years and years. Oil companies don't use the US military as often as people like to point and say you're doing it. I was making about 36,000 a year as a sergeant, and if I had taken the same job, well, not the same job, but if I had done a security detail rotation with an oil company, I would have made 130,000 per 6 months. Oil companies pay an enormous amount of money for their mercenaries, and that's exactly what they are. When you're one of the oil rig or the oil pipeline or whatever you're doing in a foreign country, they don't have to operate by the laws of armed combat. They don't have to operate on peacekeeping, any of this bullshit, hearts and minds or whatever. If you're protecting a pipeline on behalf of an oil company, there's 2 lines painted. Wait until they cross the first line to start shooting at them. Make sure you've killed them before they cross the second line. That's your rules of engagement. The military can't operate like that because it's a reflection of the US. As far as people don't understand how the oil in America works, and it's clear that people don't want to know. People just want to be lied to. People want to be lied to. That's why Bill Clinton was able to get away with getting a blowjob in the Oval Office, and people didn't have a huge problem with it because Bill Clinton, he came out and was like in your face about being completely full of shit. Like I never had sexual relations with that woman. It's the equivalent of saying I'm completely full of shit, and how do you like that? Like, we're not helping our oil companies because remember, we import, like, people forget we import oil. We import oil because there's really 2 types of crude. Well, to keep it simple, there's 2 types of crude oil. There's oil that turns into fuel and oil that turns into lubricants and everything else. That's why you don't have a fuel. You call it the fuels flight in the military, but it's POL. It's petroleum, oil, and lubricants. Are we dealing with crude? Are we dealing with fuel? Are we dealing with oil? Are we dealing with lubricants? Well, we import oil all the time. We export crude oil all the time because we need some of that and they need some of this. Like we need this fuel from this area of the world because it's better for making this type of aviation fuel. We don't need as much of this that we have tons of, but they do because they want to use it. We're going to ship them all the crap fuel because they need it to run in their power plants. Power plants don't care what quality that you send. Like people make a big deal all the time, like with the North Korea deal, and they're like, oh, well, we were sending them heavy oil for their nuclear weapons program. And you look at people and you're like, what fool ass thing just came out of your mouth? Heavy oil doesn't go into nuclear weapons. Heavy oil just gets burned in power plants instead of higher quality crude that could be turned into, gasoline or diesel. I mean, remember, you refine oil, you take the gasoline cut off, you take the aviation fuel cut off, you take the diesel fuel cut off, you take the other lubricant fuel off. You're still left with a lot of burnable crap, but not internal combustion engine burnable. But no, we're not like, yes, there have been some times in the past where we've used the military to protect American oil company interests. Absolutely. But remember, if we don't protect those interests, it affects the price of gasoline at home. The American economy is very, very delicate. Hold on, I have a package. Be right back. I wonder if he is partly blocking Venezuelan oil to drive up prices to make American oil companies more profitable, or at least make them as profitable as they were before Trump started the drill campaign. Here's the problem. Oil doesn't get resolved in the short term. Oil gets changed quarterly. Unless you had like a major depot of already processed fuel explode. And I'm talking on the magnitude of tens of millions of gallons becomes either destroyed, contaminated, or just inaccessible. There's not a lot that's going to, in the short term, raise oil prices. What raises oil prices is people driving more. People utilizing oil more. That's why you see gas prices go up in America around Memorial Day, around the 4th of July, around Labor Day, and then in some regions of the country around Thanksgiving, around Christmas, when people are going to be traveling. Oil companies don't want the price of oil. Believe it or not, they understand their market. They want to keep the price of oil above this per barrel, but they actually want to keep it below this per barrel because they know once it goes over this per barrel, people stop driving, people stop using it. My worry using our oil reserves is that we only have so much, and when it's gone, it's gone. Then we are completely dependent on foreign oil at whatever cost those countries want to charge us, and we won't be able to do anything about it. Well, yeah, that's the big thing about why I've said for years, Donald Trump is an idiot. For years, previous presidents to Trump had specifically not tapped in to the strategic oil reserves because we want to be the people with the last pizza. We want to be the country with the last of the oil. But when we dip into our oil reserves to lower the short-term price, let's be honest, most people drive around too damn much anyway. Like yesterday, my wife and I went to the stir fry place, and then while we were there, we were driving home, and my wife said, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna pick the kid up from school, and I'm gonna go back to Hobby Lobby." And I said, "Well, why didn't we go to Hobby Lobby when it's 45 minutes from the house? Why didn't we go to Hobby Lobby when we were there?" And she said, "Oh, I didn't think of it." And I said, "Well, don't you have an appointment up there on Wednesday?" And she said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, then go there then. Why are you going to do 45 minutes, 45 minutes, 45 minutes, 45 minutes, 45 minutes, 40? Just go there once. Like, go there in conjunction with another appointment." Yeah, we drive too much. It's just like, what drives me nuts is the people that are clamoring the loudest for lower gas prices are the drivers, the Grubhub, the DoorDash drivers, the delivery drivers. What has Amazon done? Moved to electric vehicles. My state has an enormous amount of its power is produced wind power. We have in the middle of the state, we have massive windmill farms. Now, you want Americans to drive as much as Europeans? Unheard of. Yeah, like it's like maybe it's because I grew up in an era where everybody pinched every penny. But I try to couple all of my errands to one day. I try to run around I try to run around and get all my running around done in a single day. My wife drives around like gasoline comes out of the tap. But and there's nothing wrong if that's what people want to do, but then don't question why you're broke at the end of the week. Why don't I have any money? Well, you don't have any money because you spent it all on gasoline. But my problem with it is we have no legal right to be sanctioning Venezuela. Like, at the end of the day, the only reason why we have the ability to sanction another country is because nobody else on the planet can tell us no. Nobody can tell us no. You sold your car today, you're doing carpooling with your parents to go grocery shopping, and then day-to-day stuff I get at the local grocer. Yeah. See, that's what we need more of. We need to change back to there is a reason why a lot of things work in Europe that don't work in the United States. And a big part of that is how European towns are still laid out. You'd probably need to redesign many of your cities to fix the issue of people driving too much. Kind of. Like, kind of. But people need to resolve themselves that I dated a girl in Lincoln Park. And I would drive up to Lincoln Park and find a free parking spot. You could be there for up to 2 days. And I knew the local meter maid. She knew that I was there all the time. She would say to me, just make sure that you move your vehicle. I don't care if you move one spot back, one spot forward, whatever. I don't care if you can't see another spot to move to, just move your vehicle a little bit. But then we would jump on the bus to go to the Art Institute or to go downtown. And she would say to me, why are we getting on the bus if you own a car? Because I have both of our bus passes for the week, and they're like $14 for the week. But parking down at the Art Institute is $25. So I can buy a $7 bus pass for the whole week, or I could go to the Art Institute for 2 hours for $25. Americans complain, and like Americans. Remember, I said I was watching that Ashes of Creator, and I said you've got two types of people: the ones that see the problems, and the ones that offer the solutions. And sometimes a person can do both, but very often people should just worry about talking about the problems. Americans can't afford things. Americans need a basic income. No, they don't. Not yet. What they need to do is they need to look at what's actually necessary. Has U.S. public transportation degraded or gotten better since I was a kid? Sadly, it's done both depending on the area. Or even worse, they've done some really good ideas and then let them go to pot. For example, we have a great we have an absolutely amazing train down here by St. Louis. Let me see if I can pull up so we have this as a bus route, or we have this as a train route from St. Louis to Scott Air Force Base. And this goes through all the major areas. The problem is that from about here to about here is really shitty neighborhoods. So who gets on the train in the really shitty neighborhoods? All the fucking degenerates. All the fucking drug users. All the fucking gangbangers. They get on the train to go into the city. They cause fucking problems. Well, does the Metro Authority put cops on all the cars? No. So what happens? You have all of this is middle class, upper middle class people who would more than happily ride the train to the airport. But nobody gets on the train. They run the train. The train used to be 6 cars. Now the train is 2 cars. Because nobody uses it. And when we get asked all the time, why don't you use it? It's because it's not safe. Well, you have public transit that could be alleviating thousands of cars off of the road. For the Cardinals games, traffic, I will not go downtown on a day there's a Cardinals game. There is only one way to the zoo, and that route takes you past Cardinal Stadium. Busch Stadium, I think it is. I will not go downtown on a day there's a Cardinals game, because there's no other way to get back unless I go all the way around the top of the city and come across the other bridge, which is still pretty backed up due to the Cardinals game. There's a ton of people that feel the same way. The zoo, the aquarium, Union Station, they all have, they all note lower than average attendances on days that there's a game. Well, if you fix the damn train, thousands of people would ride the train instead of being in traffic, because there are 4 stops that you can get off and walk to the stadium. Public transport suffers because of social issues. Yes, absolutely. And because of that issue, everybody feels they need to have a car. And when I was a teenager, I had a piece of shit car. I had the Adam Sandler piece of shit car, and then I had a nice car. I drove the piece of shit car to school and stuff because I expected it to get dinged and scratched and whatever. But I was fortunate. I had a father who was a mechanic, an older brother who was a mechanic, uncle who was a mechanic. I had a lot of people that could help me with a car. But there would be people with no car making fun of my piece of shit car. And that's what's wrong with America. You're going to make fun of me when I have a car at least that has air conditioning. Because what does a car have to have when you're a teenager? A back seat. I think we all know why. A stereo and AC. Buddy, not your stuff. That's my stuff. You're not going my stuff. Thank you. So yeah, we suffer from this idea that people think they need to buy the biggest and baddest and nicest stuff. Actually, I wanted to look up something because there's a house for sale in my area and it's not even getting a look. I can see it most of the day. My first car was a 72 Pinto. A Pinto! Hell yeah! I know a Pinto hatchback. Some of my worst memories as a kid were in the back seat of a Pinto hatchback. Freezing ass cold. The Pinto that later became the hatchback Escort. They thought it was the greatest thing in the world. Yeah. So, this house, yeah, they did exactly what I tell people not to do when you're trying to There's no price history. Why is there no price history? Oh, because I'm on Realtor. I need to be on Zillow. So these people right down the block from me, they are selling their house. And remember I said not long ago, I said my house is worth about $300,000 on paper, but I in no way, shape or form thought that this house was worth anywhere near that. Oh, they have the same, theirs is the same model as mine. Oh, those are ugly. Oh, no, it's not. No, they have a different model than mine. I'm looking for the price history. Okay. So this is what the people did. Grab this real quick. So back in 2020, the house was sold for 207. Now, 207 there. 2007, the house was sold for 203. So 2007, 203, that housing bubble burst. The house price went low. And then 13 years later, the house had barely gotten back over the top of the bubble. And then these crazy people, right? 207 in 5 years. In 5 years, they tried to grab $60,000, right? 268, 268, 268, 268, and now they've dropped it to 260. Your house ain't gonna sell for 260 because people can see that in 2020 it sold for 205. People are not going to give you $60,000, $50,000 in profit in that short of a period of time. Now, I know what some people are going to say. And they're going to say, well, if the house is worth it. And that's where we get to the thing that I constantly am trying to teach Americans, because Americans don't get taught in school like the rest of the world does. Value and price are not the same. Like, for example, my wife told me the other day, I have a pop and a protective. I have this pop. It was a gift. This pop is a one of a kind, well, not one of a kind, but a limited edition run of pops. It was $50. It is now worth $2,000 because it's still in the protective case. It's never been opened, never been touched. It's now worth $2,000. If I put it online and I put $2,000 and somebody buys it. That's what people don't understand about value. That's what people don't understand about the word worth. Do those gloves actually help my hands? Yes. I have multiple sets of compression gloves. These I have three different sets of compression gloves. I have one set for sleeping, one set for not keyboard work, and then one set for keyboard work. These actually help me, but I have small cluster neuropathy. I when I first got these, I didn't know what my hand pain was. I thought it was carpal tunnel. I thought it was old age. I actually have small cluster neuropathy. That's what's been making me so sick. It just took them years and years and years to figure it out. So for me, they work, but for everybody else that doesn't have neuropathy, I don't know. Some people find it more comfortable to have gloves on. Some don't. I just wear these because my hands hurt all the time. I also wholeheartedly endorse, I can't believe I'm saying this, I wholeheartedly endorse barefoot shoes now. I never thought that I would. I've started wearing neuropathy shoes, and those help too. I'm really trying really hard to stay a streamer. I don't know how much YouTube content creation I'm gonna do, but I really want to do my show a couple of times a week. I am gonna have to cut down. I'm not gonna be able to do 5 shows a week anymore. It's just too much. It just, if I'm good, I'll do 5 shows. If I'm not, I'll do 3. So, but no, we just have this problem in America where everybody feels they need to live up to some standard. I think the big problem is we're not teaching kids. We're not teaching kids properly. My kids have always been told the life of the post-apocalyptic survival. Do you have shelter? Do you have water? Do you have food? Do you have warmth? After that, meet those needs, and then whatever is left is luxury. You got your rent paid, your utilities paid. I don't have any money to go have fun. Fun's optional. Go to the library, get a book. The library's free. Borrow 10 books at a time. Books, movies, video games, they've got all that crap at the library. I guess it's because park is free. Go to the park. Yeah, go for a walk. People don't get it. Well, that's why my watch isn't going off. My watch is on Do Not Disturb. There we go. But yeah, people are under the impression it's like I said, growing up, I had friends. I worked hard. I had a job. The day I turned 16, I had a job. I already had a job before 16. I delivered newspapers. I shoveled snow. I mowed lawns. I raked leaves. I cleaned fish tanks. At the end of the day, I liked the idea of making money. But you'd have the kids that would not want to work hard. Why do you always have stuff? Why do you always have options? Well, I always have options because I have money in my pocket. I don't like being hungry. I accept the fact that I was the youngest of 5 kids. My dad was paying child support on 2 kids. And we didn't have a lot of waste. Like, there wasn't a lot of money to spare. So when I was old enough to start doing stuff and put money in my pocket, I went and I did that. But what I respected about my parents was 50 cents out of every dollar I earned went into my savings account that I couldn't touch. And you don't think about that as a kid. You're just like, okay, I made $100 on my paper route this week. 50, and keep this in mind. I made $100 on my paper route as a kid at 8 years old, when minimum wage was like $4 an hour. So $4 an hour is $160 a week for a person working a full-time job, and I'm making $100 a week on my paper route. Making money was good back then as it is now, but the difference is I've seen over the years as kids nowadays are taught that the value of they're not taught the value of money the way we were. Right. Kids aren't that, and parents spoil their kids. Not that, we weren't spoiled to the extent that our parents could spoil us, but entertainment was expensive and necessities were cheap. And now people are under the belief that necessities are expensive. I'll just do my usual, house check, because people are always talking about, how there's no affordable housing. There's no affordable housing. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna take houses, condos, townhomes, and we'll do mobiles, because we'll do multifamily. We just won't do farms. So any port in a storm, right? And then house for sale, 189,000. 189,000. Oh, wait, hold on. You guys don't have 189,000. 189,000 is kind of pricey. How much do you need to be making to 189 divided by 3, 63, 63 divided by 2080. You got to be making $30 an hour to afford that one. That's probably a little pricey, right? We probably want to skip that one. These are all going to be auctions at $29,000. Let's be honest for a second. That is an actual no shit house for $29,000. Is it going to need a lot of work? You bet your ass it's going to need a lot of work. You bet your ass it's going to need a lot of work. $20,000, going to need a lot of work. Without a doubt. It's a 2-bedroom, 1-bath. But people say there's no houses available. $20,000? That's cheaper than rent. $37,000. Now, foreclosures, different story. That one's kind of shit. $50,000. That's a nice little house. Probably needs a lot of work. I can see right off the bat, it's got a metal awning, so it hasn't been taken care of too well. Those windows need to go. Basement windows need to be replaced. Foundation looks good. Obviously, I'm doing this from pictures. Inboard heating, that's going to be a nightmare. That's not going to be too expensive to rip out, though. Small bedroom, small room. That has potential. It doesn't have a bath. It only has a shower. That all has to get ripped out, but that's tile, that's cosmetic. Obviously, I can see right there. There's been some door issues. So you're probably talking about ripping out the whole back door. Those look like 2-prong outlets. So $1,500 to bring an electrician in. Newer-ish unit. It's not an old school. Newer-ish water heater. Standard unfinishable basement. Yeah, right here. Unless there, let's see if there's a disclosure of something wrong. Make this ranch home. That's not a ranch. An investment property with sizable backyard with a full basement. Your new home. Upon entering, review the living area, which leads to the first bedroom. The house is just waiting for the right person to turn it into a home. So no disclosures of anything really negative. They're selling it for $50,000. It sold the last time. It was built in 1936. So, yeah, I mean, for somebody who's willing to spend 6 months rolling up their sleeves. So let's just do this real quick. 50,000 divided by 3 divided by 2080. You need to be making $8 an hour to afford this house. I'm not even joking. Let's throw this into the calculator real quick. Not this one. I don't like that one. Okay. So 50,000. We're going to assume that you can put down $1,600 on the down payment. Loan term 30 years interest rate. I'll even go shittier. I'll go 6.5. Start date January of next year. Property tax is going to be about 4%. Homeowners insurance is going to be about $880. PMI, we're going to go 1%. HOA fees, none. Other costs, we will take out other costs. Your monthly payment for that house would be $305 a month. You're probably already spending $700 a month in rent. So what did I say? Back door. I said the back door needed to be redone. We're going to call that a smooth $3,000. Okay. Your electrical, you're going to want that repulled to a box. Box is going to call it $1,500. The labor to pull for a house that's small, we'll call that another $1,000. And the furnace looked newish. So you're talking about $55,500. And you're going to have a house that you can build equity in. But yeah, you're going to have to learn how to do some shit. You're going to, the first couple of months you're in there, it might suck, right? The first couple of months you're in there, you might be like, well, this sucks because I can't really set my computer equipment up or my TV or whatever because the electrical's not set. How much did we say you need? $2,500? Well, your rent, your mortgage is going to be less than half of your rent. My daughter's rent on a 3-bedroom apartment is $950. If I probably should just buy that place and flip it and move her in there. Be like, get the fuck out of here. Be cheaper. Well, hold on. Let me think about that for a second. So I'm gonna give the rental company $11,400 in 1 year in rent. That pays for more than 20% of the house. Think about it that way. And that's like so I'm tired of hearing this thing that there's no houses to buy. There's plenty of houses to buy. They're like, oh, well, it's not going to be a nice house. Well, if you want nice stuff, go get a big boy or a big girl job. If you do the work other than electrical, figure 10K just in case, yeah. Just in case other things need to be done due to the, sure. And that's one of the things when you live in the house. Like, yeah, I said that tile floor was jank as shit. The bathroom needed some tender loving care. But it's like I said, after my mom died and I needed a place to go. Yeah, the roof. I bought a house that every weekend I was working on. And I would have eventually finished it. But my girlfriend at the time, she's Hispanic, and her family did all sorts of stuff. And I gave her the envelope full of money, and we went out for the weekend. And when I came back, my house was done. Which was nice, because then it gave me back the time. People don't want to put in the work anymore. People don't want to put in the work. They want to complain. Like, I don't like I like the life I have. Like, somebody said to me, I mentioned on the show the other day, I said, yeah, I'm going to be at Disney about 5 times next year. The person PM'd me on Discord, because I talk to a lot of people on Discord. I don't mind. Find me on Discord. I'm Jalan on Discord. Talk to me all you want. People will message me and they'll be like, how can you afford to go to Disney? It's like, I stay at Shades of Green, and the military ticket is $500 next year for a season pass. I'd be an idiot to not go to Disney a bunch of times next year. Make my family sick of Disney next year, right? Make my family sick of it. We're going down 4 days in February, 8 days in May, 3 days in June. We'll probably go down 3 days in August, a couple of days in October, and probably a couple of days in like December. After the room, the only expensive part is the plane tickets. Well, I'm driving down most of them, pick my family up to save on the concierge chauffeur charges. But I'm happy with my life. If you're not happy with your life, figure out what's going to make you happy. Like, I have a friend, makes $23 an hour. Still not happy with their life. What is it going to take to make you happy? Like, at some point, you're making $23 an hour without a college degree. And this is the other one that makes people mad that I say this. If you keep wanting them to give you a basic universal income, you want them to give you a, quote, living wage. Minimum wage is not a living wage. And I will never say that the federal minimum wage is a living wage. But we got to talk about this $15 an hour thing. $15 an hour is $31,000 a year. Not many people have come to me with a budget on $31,000 a year and not been able to justify why they can't live on it. Well, I can't afford a car. Where is a car in your basic necessity? Bus pass. You need transportation. You don't need your own car. And then they always like to hit back with well, there's no buses in my area. Well, then you're living by choice in an area that requires a car when you know you can't afford a car. If you live in an area that you need a car, that's dumb on you. It's like right now, my daughter is not in a mental space that she can work. She has a car. She doesn't have a lot of money because she can't work. I'm trying to get her deemed disabled because half the time I think she needs to be in an in-treatment facility for several years to try to figure out whatever's wrong with her. If she starts complaining to me about she doesn't have money, I'll just turn around and say, great. If you want to get a job, but you're still not going to have any money because all of these bills then become yours. Like, you're complaining about your quality of life that you're not paying for. I'm paying for it. I pay your rent. I pay your utilities. I pay your internet. That guy in Steve Harvey's show that walked to the work because his car broke down had 20 miles, so he started walking at 11 p.m. to get to work at 6. Yeah. Yeah, you can afford a car. You might not be the car you want. Might have to pick up a mechanic's manual. And that's the thing. Like, we've lost that idea. We've lost the idea that if you're broke, you don't get nice shit. You take broken shit and you turn it into nice shit. Billionaire Ray Dalio joins push to fund Trump accounts, pledging $75 million to Connecticut kids. U.S. Treasury asked major philanthropic donors to contribute to new investment accounts for children as part of what Secretary Scott Bessent called a 50-state challenge to raise funds for the Trump Accounts program. The president is calling on our nation's business leaders to help make America great again by securing the financial future of Americans' children. Billionaire hedge fund founder Ray Dalio, along with his wife, announced they would commit $250 to 300,000 children under 10 in Connecticut who live in zip codes where the median income is less than 150,000. The $75 million commitment follows the $6.2 billion pledge from Michael and Susan Dell. The Dells promised to invest $250 in the accounts of 25 million children, 10 and under, who live in zip codes across the country that also have that median income. The new investment accounts were created as President Trump's tax and spending legislation. Under the new law, the U.S. Department of Treasury will deposit $1,000 into the investment accounts of children born during Trump's second term. Starting on July 4th, our nation's 250th anniversary, parents, family members, employers, and friends will be able to contribute up to $5,000 to each Trump account each year. Money in the accounts must be invested in an index fund that tracks the overall stock market. When the children turn 18, they can withdraw the funds to put towards their education, buy a home, or start a business. While this seems like a really good idea, because it really, really is a good idea. Let me do a quick math calculation. Having a calculator run the curve right now, but it's not an entirely bad idea. So you take $5,000 when a kid is born, and if you make no other contributions, assuming you put $5,000 in at 5%, compounding quarterly, at 18 years in, it'll be worth $12,300. It's not amazing, right? It's not awesome, but this is where I tell people, if you have $20 you throw it in your money market account and you never touch it. If at the end of the way I run things in my financial world is on December 1st. I'm sorry. On November 30th, I take note of how much is in my checking account and my other checking account and my debit account. So I figure out how much is left on November 30th. So say there's, I don't know, $23.56. Then on the 1st, when my pension hits, I take $23.56 and I send it over to my money market account, and then I refill up these other two accounts. Because I never keep the money sitting, I never keep last month's money commingled with this month's money in the checking account. I send that $23.56 over to the money market account. Once it's in the money market account, I pretend it doesn't exist until the next time one of my rotating CDs comes open. And when the rotating CDs come open, I look at my situation, I say, do I need money or do I not need money? If I don't need money, I take everything in the money market account less $5,000, dump everything into that onto the CD, and then lock this CD up for another, 12 months, 15 months. I let it roll. Why spend it if you don't need it? Now, if my TV in my bedroom broke today, I would look and I'd say, okay, first of all, do I need a TV? And I do. I need a TV. When I have a day where I can't move, my back is killing me, I lay in bed, I watch TV, or I play video games in my bed. Need a TV. Next question. Do I need an 80-inch TV in my bedroom? No, probably not. What do I have in there? A 65? Okay. Can I find a 65 for cheap? Is there a 61 for cheaper? But I see people buy stuff they don't even need. People buy things just to buy them. I know people that have ridiculous $800-900 kitchen appliances, not stove, microwave. They buy that stuff, they never use it. Is this one of those 1 thing in 10 that Trump is trying to do that I absolutely agree with? Yeah, this one, I absolutely agree with the Trump Saves program. But do you know what I'd like to see go along with that? Because they say the point is to buy a house, start a business, or go to college. What I would like to see is college loans, first of all, capped at $100,000. So this is the first thing I want to see. I want to see all college loans capped to $100K. Second, I want to see the interest capped at 15% of principal. Meaning, you borrow 100,000, you pay back 115, and that's it. Now, if you're late, if you miss payments, then there'll be a penalty schedule. If you just decide to not pay back your student loans, you're in violation. Then there might be more interest applied. But if you're in good faith, you go to college for 4 years, you get your degree, we give you a 90-day grace period after graduation to secure your job, first and last month's rent, all that, then you start making the payments. You should not have people that took $200,000 in college loans have paid back $175,000 and still owe $205,000 on their student loans. You should not be taking a mortgage in order to get a college degree. Why did college degrees get so expensive in America? Because the cap on the federal student loans was raised. Put the cap back on it. If a college knows the maximum amount that a student can finance to go there is $100,000, guess what the yearly tuition is going to be? $22,000. So room and board can be done in 3, and then they can have students who go a little bit into personal debt or borrow a little bit of money from mom and dad or get jobs to pay for books. I understand and I recognize that there is a difference between an Ivy League education and a normal university education. I understand there's a difference between a normal university education and state education. And I understand there is a difference between state education and a community college, with Florida being the exception, because Florida community colleges give 4-year degrees. But I don't think people should be in debt for 20 years to get a piece of paper that really is kind of worthless anyway. Your college diploma is worthless. What about just not taxing people who make less than 32 a year, or whatever that number was? The taxing people below the poverty line? Yeah, the taxing people below the poverty line is another thing we need to do. And we're getting close. We're getting close. And the close is, I'm pulling up if you're single, so if we're going to say $15 an hour is the magical number, right? Then what we've said is the poverty line is then $31,200 if you're single. And that's not right. Hold on. Oh, yeah. So if we're saying $15 an hour is the minimum basic income, then what we're saying is $31,200 if you're single, and $62,004 if you're married is how much it's going to take for you to live. And then we're going to give you an exception or a deduction for kids, but we won't put kids in it yet. But what we've done is we've said the standard deduction on the tax form is $14,006 if you're single, and $29,200 if you're married. Now here's the problem. You have Bernie Sanders and all the Democrats arguing that we need a $15 an hour federal minimum wage because that's what people need to make in order to live. And yet we tax them on $16,000 of that money. And not only do we tax them on $16,000 of that money, but we tax them multiple ways on that $16,000 worth of money. Remember, you pay Medicare, FICA, FUTA, Social Security, all of that out of your paycheck. And of course, that reduces your income. That reduces your taxable income. But then you pay tax on what's left. You pay sales tax. You pay property tax. You pay car registration, which is just another tax, right? So property, sales, car registration. You're not living on the money they say you need to live, which is what kills me about all the people who start talking about, oh, well, we need a universal basic income. What's the number? Well, I don't know. Well, then shut up. Well, we need to keep that number in line with the rate of inflation for minimum wage. Yeah, except you're not factoring in that we're on a fiat currency instead of a hard-backed currency, and that has more to do with the lack of buying power of the dollar than minimum wage. But this right here, married couples should not pay taxes at all. Any taxes. Should not pay any taxes on money until they've made $62,401. And then if they have kids, whatever the deduction we're going to give you for kids. Now, what people are going to say is, well, then we won't have enough money to run the government. And what my answer to that is, you're not going to need as much money to run the government because, number one, you're not going to need to give the states as much money, because if people have this much more in their pocket than they're going to spend on the local economy. Which means, yeah, you're paying less in federal taxes, but you're paying more on, you're buying more gas, you're buying more groceries, you're buying more stuff. And people are like, but you're, and whenever I bring this up, people's knee-jerk reaction is to say, but you're still not giving us a universal basic income. But I am. Because you're keeping all of your money, if you're single, up to $31,200. But I don't make $31,200. Okay, if that's your argument, then your argument is you want free, and I don't want to give you free. I want to get the boot off of your back. I don't want to give you anything. What I want to give you is an opportunity. I want to give you the chance to crawl out of poverty. But you want me to put money in your pocket? It's just like, you notice nobody wants to have the reparations argument with me because as soon as I say, you know what, I'm tired of the reparations argument, so I will go ahead and I will say, we will give each and every slave that was a slave in America, we'll give them all $400,000. But we're also going to send them a bill for $650,000. They owe $1 to every union. They owe $1 to every family for every Union soldier that died ending slavery. Here you go. Well, now I owe $250,000. Wait, reparations have to be paid, right? That's the whole argument, right? You want reparations to be paid. Well, then let's pay them. Actually, it's 360. I had to look at the number. So we give them all 300,000 and they pay 360. The problem is we don't want to actually fix problems. We want to bitch about problems. I want to fix problems. I want to leave the world a better place. I want to leave the world a better place than I found it for my kids. And right now, it pains me to say this, the world is in a worse spot in 2025 than it was in 1995. The world is in a worse spot in 2025 than it was in 2005. Senate passes $901 billion defense bill that pushes Hesketh towards both strike video. Hold on, let me grab your comment. I'll get back to the new one. So where do I think the problem is? You made 20 an hour in 2000. Today in 2025, I can still only get 20 an hour for my area. That's no increase in 25 years. But look at the prices today. Are people asking for more pay? Because the way I see it, we wouldn't ask for more money if the prices of things wouldn't go up. The very fact that you ask for more money makes prices go up. That's what people don't understand. Inflation happens at any point in a process where any single part of the process becomes more expensive. Because what happens is, what people asking for more money don't understand is by asking for more money, everybody else now has to reevaluate how much money they make. So just to build a very, 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 very small closed ecosystem, you have a school, you have a daycare, this is your house, this is you at your job, right? And you're making 20 an hour. But we have to ask for more to pay for the increase in profits companies want. Companies don't want more profits. That's the thing people keep saying to themselves, and it's not a reality. companies raise prices by a percentage, and when you raise the price by a percentage to cover another percentage, it makes things cost more than they need to. But I'll show you that one as well. But you're making $20 an hour, and the person here is making $15 an hour, and the person here is making $25 an hour. Now, the daycare person making $15 an hour is okay making $15 an hour. The school teacher is okay making $20 an hour, but you're not okay making $20 an hour. You want more. Well, we bump you up to $23 an hour. Well, if we don't bump up the daycare people, then we're going to lose daycare people to go to whatever industry you're in. If we don't bump up the school teacher pay, we're going to lose school teachers to whatever industry just got bumped to 23. Because you see, this person went to school for 4 years, and now they're only making $2 an hour more than somebody that didn't go to school for 4 years, whatever the industry is. So now we have to bump them up. Well, as soon as we do that, property taxes had to go up. Unfortunately, at $20 an hour, you are making $41,600. At $23 an hour, you were making $47,840. Right? So for you, you're happy because you have $6,240 more dollars in your pre-tax budget. But now the problem is, we just raised your property taxes, and so you just lost $1,500 on a bite on your property tax. And now the daycare that you have a kid in, they have to pay the daycare workers more money because otherwise there won't be enough daycare. Otherwise, now you're going to have a problem because now you have nowhere to put your kid because 5 daycare workers left and went over to the job that pays $23 an hour. So we have to pay the daycare workers more in order to, we have 250 kids in the school. We need X number of daycare workers. Well, now your daycare costs went up by another 1,000. So right off the bat, 2 big cuts that happen really quickly, your $6,240 is already down to $3,740. But now your job trickle touches everybody else's job. And by the time the accordion squeezes back, you're actually in worse shape than you were at $20 an hour. Once all the prices catch up, you're screwed, which means you go and you ask for another raise. And it gives you a 2 to 3 year window where your head's above the water, and then the prices collapse on you. For example, the profits thing, yes, I understand that Walmart is profit taking. I get that. And I'm not justifying Walmart's perspective. What I'm saying is Walmart made a business decision. So what caused the prices of things to go up if not more profits? People wanting more money. Somewhere in every system, somebody wants more money, which touches prices, and I'll show you. So Walmart buys a banana. They buy a banana for $1, and they sell the banana for $2. And by doing that, they have a $1 markup, and a percentage of that $1 markup is profit. But the key part is Walmart is happy to sell the banana for $2 because between the $1 markup and minus their costs, the salespeople, the stockers, the people who throw out the bad bananas, all that, they're happy with the percentage that's left over for profit. But then Donald Trump comes along and puts a 10% tariff on bananas. So Walmart is now paying $1.10 for their banana. And Walmart was able to function with a $1 markup. So instead of them selling the banana for $2.10, Walmart looks at it and they say, okay, well, we by law have an obligation to our shareholders. So what we're going to do is we're going to raise our prices. We're going to raise our price by 8%. I'm not blaming the workers for asking more money for no reason. There has to be a reason. They do ask money. You ask money for no reason every year. Let me finish this, and then I'll show you that one. So what Walmart does is they take their $1.10 and they say, well, we're going to charge an 8% markup on the $1.10, which is going to take us to $2.18. We didn't charge a 10% markup to cover the tariffs. We only charged 8. But because we charged an 8% markup, we're now actually making, you take the $2.18 and you minus the $1.10. Now instead of making a $1 markup, we're actually making $1.08. Why? Because the shareholders say we might as well. Now, you said, I'm not blaming the workers for asking for more money. Well, it's like this. Ready? You make $15 an hour. And at the end of the year, what are you expecting? You're expecting a raise. Why? Why do you believe your labor is suddenly worth any more? Your job was to pull the handle all day and stamp the piece of metal. I was paying you $15 an hour and 25 to do that. Why do you suddenly believe that you're entitled to a 3% raise? And people are going to say, well, I need to cover inflation. But inflation only exists because everybody wants a raise, because what everybody wants to get ahead. The problem is, if everybody gets ahead by the same incremental amount, the people at the bottom fall behind even though they got the same raise. This year you're making 15 and I'm the supervisor and I'm making 50. And you argue for a 5% raise. Okay? You argue for a 5% raise. And I'm okay with that. I'm going to give you 75 cents an hour. So next year you're making $15.75. Except the problem is I'm making $52.50 and I still only took a 5% raise. I matched your raise. What's happened? Here, there was $35 an hour difference between us. Here, there's $36.75 difference between us. But why? I gave myself the same raise you gave yourself. That's not the problem. I wouldn't have to ask for prices if I wouldn't have to ask for more if prices didn't go up. Prices go up because you ask for more. Because somebody in some process did their rate. Because remember, not everybody runs on a January to December fiscal year. Most companies that engage at all with the government operate in October to September fiscal year. Now, other companies choose to run a different fiscal year, so because they're heavy into equipment buying and they want to be able to pull depreciation according to the newest and greatest tax laws. So their fiscal years are specifically set up differently. But because everybody is giving their raises at different points, as soon as you give a raise, the price goes up. Costs me $10 to make this cup. $10 to make the cup. $2 is in parts, $1 is in shipping, $7 is in my own labor. I sell the cup for $15. So somebody else can sell the cup for $19.95. My markup is $5. Their markup is $4.95. Everybody's happy. As long as nobody changes anything, we could go on forever this way until everybody owns a cup. The problem is the people I buy my paint from gave a raise. So now my paint costs me $2.10. If I don't raise my price, I'm not in equilibrium anymore. So I could choose to stay at 5 and lose 10 cents, or I can go to 5.10 and stay equal, or because my people that put the paint on the cups, they also want to raise, now I have to sell the cups for $5.25. Well, if I sell the cups for $5.25, they can't sell the cups for $19.95 anymore, or their $4.95 is no longer enough. Fundamentally, that's the problem. People don't understand capitalism, so they don't understand. I want more. This is me. I want more. My pull affects them. This pull affects him. This pull affects me. And we're going around and around and around in a circle. People keep advocating for more money. I want more money. I need more money. No, what you really need, what you truly, really need is taxes to go down. You need more money in your pocket. You need more buying power. You don't need more money. You need that 50 cent per gallon of tax on gasoline to go away. Because you're spending $5 every fill up, or $5 every 10 gallons. So let's say $10 every fill up on taxes. Well, I don't need to give you more money. I need to figure out a way how to do it cheaper. Hey, we're actually reducing your pay from $20 to $18 an hour. But we're reducing FICA, FUTA, Social Security from 6.25% back down to 5%. So you're keeping 1.5% of your money. We've also reduced property taxes by 2%. We've also reduced gas tax. We've taken gas tax off completely. At the end of the day, you're like, so I'm making $2 less an hour, but I'm going to have more money in my pocket at the end of the year. Yes. Because when, again, you have property tax that's already $4,000. And this is what kills me about people. Property tax is $4,000. And it represents 4%. And so you'll start hearing people talk about 0.25% property tax. And you're like, a 0.25%? You're like, that's $250. You're calling it 0.25% like it's like nothing. You're like, oh, it's just 0.25%. Well, it's $250 because my house is $100K. Oh, my house is $400K? It's talking about $1,000 increase in my property taxes. Treat this with the respect it deserves then. Like, don't just say it's 0.25%. Now, do I get that people are mad because corporations take big profits? Yeah, sure. But who owns those corporations? Your retirement fund owns them. Do you own stock? Then you're an owner of a company. Unless you suck at your job, your boss didn't say no to your raise because he's an asshole. He's got to allocate that money from somewhere, and then balances he took your money from. Prices go up to balance your raise, and the next employee and the next employee. Now the guy who works at the electric company risking his life every time he touches a line wants a raise because you're making as much as he is now with zero risk. Now electric prices go up. So milk price, exactly. When people start talking about we need an $18 minimum wage, and then the paramedics turn around and say, hold up, you're going to give fast food workers $18 an hour? Well, yeah, because we think everybody deserves a living wage. Cool. I went to school for 6 months. I went to school for a year to be an EMT. I went to school to be a paramedic. I carry risk. Not only risk to myself of going to sometimes places where I arrive before the police arrive, but I deal with every single time I'm dealing with a person, I run the risk of a communicable disease. I'm not doing that for burger flipper pay, or I'll just go flip burgers. So I'm making 18, burger flippers are making 13, you're making burger flippers make 18, I want a $5 an hour raise. So now paramedics go from 18 to 23. Well, then the lineman turns around and says, hold up, I'm making 22. I'm the guy out there hoping I don't fry my balls off trying to swap out a blown transformer in the middle of a blizzard because you don't have electricity. I sure as hell am not doing that for 22. If the paramedic makes 23, I want 29. And now people are like, oh, well, it's the corporations. Well, yeah, it's the corporations because the corporations exist as a percentage, but they're a percentage on the biggest number. Like, people are like, Walmart could afford to give all of their employees a $25 an hour minimum wage. No, they couldn't. No, they could not. Because people are under the belief that these companies, like, yes, we need to change corporate tax rates. I want to remind you, we already make so an oil company making $65 billion a quarter and us paying $2 to $3 a gallon is okay when they would still be ultra rich if they made $10 billion and the prices would be 80 cents. Well, okay, let me stop you there. First of all, there's no oil company making 65 billion profits in a quarter. You might see an oil company making 65 billion in revenue, but revenue does not equal profit. Second of all, the price of gas at the pump. No, there's not. Which oil company is making 65 billion in profit a quarter? Tell me which one it is. I'll go look them up right now. Not only will I look them up right now, I'll buy their fucking stock if they're making 65 billion in profit. Just tell me who it is. I'll research them right now live. Oil company is a really bad place to go, man. Oil's my bread and butter. Oil distribution in America, that's my jam. As of right now, I'm the last guy to hold my job. They've never replaced me. Oil distribution in America and the Middle East, that's my wheelhouse. So tell me which oil company is making 65 billion in profit. Okay? In 2000. In 2000, man, it's 2025. Hold on. I'm just going to get the numbers myself. ExxonMobil is in single-digit billions. Yeah, there is no... Saudio Amco made 100 billion in a year. Not in a quarter. In a year. I'm looking up ExxonMobil since you listed them. I'm looking up their 2024 and 2025 quarterly earnings. So let me show you how far off you are. You are off by a magnitude of masses. Okay? Their whole year. 2024 results. $33.7 billion in earnings. So that's all their profit. So you said 65 billion in a quarter. They didn't even have 65 billion in a whole year last year. 55 billion in cash flow. Cash flow is not profit. 36 billion to shareholders. So they distributed money back to the shareholders. Where's the 65 billion in profit? See, I don't mind if people are upset. But when people say, oh, this oil company made this ridiculous amount of money in profit, and you say, no, they didn't, and you come back and you say they made 65 billion in 2000 per quarter. No, they didn't. No, they did not. So our union duped us, selling us that bullshit in 2000. Yes, they did. Yes, they absolutely did. And they might have done it intentionally, or they might have done it unintentionally. Because the problem is, all too often, people don't know the difference between that and that. I made $50 million last year. Oh my God, he's baller rich. I had 49.9 million in his expenses. My profit was 100K. Revenue is just how much I bring in. It doesn't account for expenses. Revenue is cash flow. How much cash flowed in? And this is why companies structure things a certain way. And I don't like it. And if Fei Lin was here, Fei Lin understands accounting. I understand accounting. I don't like the accrual method. I think every business should run on the cash method. You either have the cash or you don't have the cash. You've either paid the cash or you haven't paid the cash. You either paid the vendor or you haven't paid the vendor. I have this in projected income. I have this in projected expenses. I have this in projected revenue. I have this in projected profit. That's great. You lost the contract. Now, as far as unions, let me tell you something about unions that makes me really, really on NVIDIA 39. Yeah, in its last fiscal report, which would be a year, not a quarter. Per quarter? Hold on. Let me find out. No, they didn't. NVIDIA did not have 31.9 billion every quarter. They had 31.9 billion in the third fiscal quarter of 2026. The second fiscal quarter was only 16.6. So the idea of what you just said, they had 31.9 billion in profit per quarter, is incorrect. They had 31.9 billion in net income for that for that quarter. Now, the other one I want to remind you is NVIDIA reporting net income is after all expenses. Right. I'm going to help you out, TWO. You posted it back to me, and you're still fucking wrong. Okay? You double down by posting it. If they had 31.9 billion profit in a single quarter and 99.2 in net income, then explain how their second quarter fiscal report ending July 28th, 2024 is 16.6. See, 31.9 times 3 is great. But we know they're a publicly traded company. I don't need to read summations. A publicly traded company has a Securities Exchange Commission obligation to report truthful, accurate numbers to them. Remember, you can lie to your customers, you can lie to your employees, you can't lie to your shareholders, as Activision Blizzard found out. So yeah, they had, and nobody is disputing, they had a quarter that ended, that they had 31.9 billion in net income for one quarter. But that doesn't mean they have that every quarter. They had a 16.6, and 16.6 billion is still an absurd amount of money. What do you... No, you're not. Because you've literally said they had 31.9 billion in profit per quarter. They didn't have that per quarter. Putting the data identifier per quarter means multiple quarters had 31.9. They didn't have that. They had a quarter of 31.9. They had a quarter of 16.6. This is, the problem is you're incorrectly reporting the information or analyzing it because you posted me something, you posted me a factoid out of context, and 31.9 times 3 is not 99.2. So they didn't have multiple quarters at 31.9. It's mathematically impossible. If you get to a total of 99, I don't give a fuck if you're on a phone, man. You're still wrong. Because you said per quarter. When I tell you you're wrong, look at it and say, I'm wrong, and understand why you're wrong. They didn't have 31.9 billion in profit per quarter. They had 31.9 billion in a quarter. But it's not quarter one. So I'm going to stop you. I have NVIDIA's data on my other screen. It's not quarter one quarter. The 31.9 billion, did that not come from third quarter? Because I'm looking at it showing it's third quarters. Their third quarter fiscal. Anyway, back to the problem with unions. The problem with unions. Unions were a really, 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 really good idea back before we had OSHA. Unions were a great idea back before we had OSHA. Unions in about 3 out of 10 situations. Okay, why not be happy with, say, 10 billion? They are happy with 10 billion. Yes, NVIDIA reported a profit of 31 billion in profit for a quarter. Yes, that is accurate. But you say at 31 billion, they could ask for more money compared to probably not asking for more if the profit was 10 billion. But you're under the assumption that NVIDIA takes the profit. They don't. That's not NVIDIA's profit. That's my profit. I'm a shareholder. That's my profit. NVIDIA is not in business to make their customers happy. NVIDIA is not in business to make their employees happy. NVIDIA is in business to make me happy and all the other shareholders. That's what they're in business for. They are in business because of federal law. Their obligation, a publicly traded company's obligation, is not to the customers and not to the employees. It is, in fact, to the shareholders. That is a core problem with capitalism. See, I get your perspective because you have a consumer-driven perspective. The consumer-driven perspective is, it takes me $500 to make this thing. And they could sell it for $1,000 and make $500 in profit. It's the same problem whether it's for the company or shareholders. We pay more, so we have to ask for more. The problem is you don't have to buy a video card. That's the problem. See, that's the piece, that's the disconnect you're missing. A video card isn't a first tier or second tier hierarchy of needs. It should be bought with disposable income. But the other piece you're missing is they could sell this for $500, make $500 in profit, and in your belief, and it's not a wrong belief, your belief is that $500 profit should be enough. But the problem is, then who pays for the R&D on the next project? Because for every product they bring to market, they have a whole bargain bin of failed projects. I don't agree with big pharma, because I think that medicine is a second tier quality of life. Yeah, but you're saying prices in general. But the problem is every single industry has needs. Every single industry, the guy picking your apples wants a raise, which means you pay more for apples. Because the guy picking the apples wants a raise, which means the orchard owner sells the apples for more, which means the distributor has to sell them for more. And by the way, this is how price stacking happens. So you have the orchard to the distributor to the store brand, the store brand to the store. The guy at the orchard wants more money to pick apples. So now the orchard owner sells them to the distributor for more. But the distributor's employees want more money to receive apples, pack apples, load apples. So now he has to sell them for more. So then the store-based distributor gets them. But those warehouse workers, those delivery drivers want more. But why is he asking for money? You're wanting to blame the worker. The worker's not the problem. The worker is the problem. Because workers want a raise for no reason. You say they want a raise because prices go up. They cause the prices to go up by assuming their labor has more value on January 1st than it did on December 31st. That is where the chicken and the egg came in. Workers wanted more money. Workers got more money. Sounds good. Prices go up. Worker says, I need more money. Boss says, I just gave you more money. And yeah, but you gave me 50 cents more an hour and my grocery bill went up by more than 50 cents an hour. Right. Because the guy at the orchard wants more money so he can go to the store and buy groceries. But the problem is, because the orchard got paid more, the distributor got paid more, the store-based distributor got paid more, and now the store has to pay more, the price of the end product goes up higher than the first person domino got in raise. Corn went up, zucchini went up, soy went up, they all went up because everybody wanted a raise. You don't want more money. You want the boot off your back. You want sales tax to go down. You want gas tax to go down. So the slave is the problem, not the companies. Okay, let me ask you this. I hate when people go with that flippant attitude because you don't want to see the reality, so you say the slave is the problem. But the problem is you're not a slave to anything. You can't get more than $20 an hour for your labor. How is that my problem? Because I made $20 an hour and I didn't like that. I didn't like the lifestyle. So I said, what do I have to do to get 30 an hour, 40 an hour, 50 an hour, 60 an hour, 75 an hour? What did I have to do to go from 20 an hour to 75 an hour? I didn't ask my boss at the $20 an hour job to give me $75 an hour. I went and I got skills in a market that allowed me to charge $75 an hour. I'm not saying that the companies aren't the problem. I'm saying the law is the problem because the law does not allow for companies to make good employee decisions because the law is written that says the Delaware General Corporation Law. Directors and officers owe fiduciary duties to the corporation and its shareholders. Dodge versus Ford Motor Company, 1919. The Michigan Court Supreme ruled that a corporation must be run primarily for the benefit of shareholders, not for broad social purposes. Ford wanted to lower car prices. This is what Henry Ford wanted to do. He wanted to do what you're talking about. He wanted to lower car prices and raise worker pay, and he wanted to suspend the dividend on the shares of stock. And the Michigan Supreme Court said, no, you cannot do that. Publicly traded companies exist for the shareholder benefit, not for the employee, not for the consumer. I get what you're saying. I understand what you're trying to say. The problem is, you're trying to say, I want non-capitalistic ideals in my capitalism. Do you want to live in socialism? I don't. Do you want to live in communism? I don't. You can't want socialist and communist flavoring on your capitalism cupcake. You can want the socialism cupcake. You can want the communism cupcake. Ask people from communist countries if they like the way things went for them. And the answer is no. I get what you're saying, but what you're not seeing is identification of a problem doesn't put blame on the problem. Identification of the problem is that's the fucking problem. Every worker has it in their head that raises should happen annually. But as I've already shown you, unless you're making the same as the manager, you're never going to catch up to the manager's pay unless you have the manager's job. Like, I had this conversation all the time with my lower enlisted. And I remember, I was a baby airman. I came into the military as an airman, worked my way up to sergeant, had my full frontal lobotomy, got my officer bars. I sat down with my airmen, and my airmen, they said, LT, can I ask you a question? I said, yeah, let's sit down, let's do some development. They said, why do officers get paid so much more than enlisted? And I said, well, what do you mean? They said, you really don't know how we do our job. And I said, that's correct. I don't know how to connect a moose head to a hydrant outlet and a pump and put the nozzle on the airplane. I don't know how to do your job. I do not know how to do your job. And the airmen were like, well, if you don't know how to do our job, shouldn't you make less than us? And I said, well, do you know how to fill out an A1 Manning report? And they kind of looked at me and I said, do you know how to do a manpower variance during wartime surging? And they kind of looked at me. I said, do you know the differences between 410s and 4334 Panama? They kind of looked at me, and one of them did. I said, just because I have a different skill set than you doesn't mean doesn't mean I don't have this an equivalent skill set. But 95% of what I get paid for is my job. 5% of what I get paid for is my accountability. I lost everything last year and went homeless, and now have to live in a bedroom in my son's house because of not getting any raise for 25 years. Why? Because of profits. I've been through 10 company shutdowns and going overseas because of company profits, and having them actually tell us that shit. And I've lived the problem. And what? So let me analyze what you've just said. You've remained static in your job for 25 years. You went through 10 shutdowns and never went to where more stable work was. While I feel for you as a singleton, I feel for you as a person because I do have empathy. Who owns your company? That is a really big deciding factor of where the blame is. If your company is a publicly traded company, then you could have bought stock all those years and been one of the people that benefits from the profits. If your company is privately held, well, that's a completely different story. But you can't look at the system and say, I don't like the rules when the rules of the game were written in 1919, and I don't think you're rolling around at 106 years old and you didn't ever have an opportunity to know what the rules were. You keep saying company profits. Who takes the risk? Now, I understand your lot in life pisses you off, and you have every right to be pissed. But as I try to remind people, at the end of the day, you've got two types of people, okay? This is me, and I build a factory, and I put $5 million of my own money into the factory. And this is the person that comes to work for me. And they put $0 of their money into the factory. I provide them the material, the tools, the space to make the product. I buy from them 40 hours of labor. If we're being honest for the analysis, I might maybe get 33 hours of actual work out of them. Right? But here's the other thing. If this company goes tits up next year, I'm out $5 million. You're out $0. Not only that, I'm paying interest, most likely on all of the loans I have. So I run my business, and I've run multiple businesses. Most businesses are not profitable in their first 5 years. Most are not. So somehow the worker feels that this should be an equivalent exchange. The workers feel that they are entitled to more than their fair share. Because I want to remind people of this. Nobody working at a job is a slave. You make an offer. You put your hand out and you say, "Would you get, stop eating plastic." You put your hand out and you say, "What I have to offer is 40 hours of labor this week." And I put my hand out and I say, "I have $400 to offer you for that." It's a barter system. What people forget about capitalism is the barter system is baked into capitalism. You're exchanging 40 hours of work for $400. And if you say, okay, then I never, ever want to hear about how it's unfair. And I'm sorry, I don't want to hear that it's unfair because you had labor that you sold and you got the dollar amount you negotiated. Now, sometimes there's no negotiation. They're hiring at $10 an hour. And that's it. That sucks. That sucks, fool. You better learn how to live on $20,800 a year because you feel that's the only option. I don't want to live on $20,800 a year. I want to live on somewhere in the neighborhood of $156,000 a year. So I go negotiate for $75 an hour. Maybe I find a job at 75. Maybe I find a job at 72. Maybe I find a job at 67. Maybe I can't stay where I'm at. I have a friend lives in a terrible fucking shitty town. Likes living there because that's where their mom lives. I said, if you want to make progress in life, get the hell out of Bubsville, Egypt. Go find a job somewhere better or save up money. Some people don't want to leave. That's a choice. Howling at the moon about how you know the game works is really counterproductive. I had these hardships. I had these travesties. I had this life that wasn't fulfilling because I never went and got skills. I'm sorry. Whose fault is that? Well, it's the company. They could choose to make less profit. No, they can't. They legally cannot. Like when people say, well, companies don't have to be greedy. Yes, if they are publicly traded, yes, they most certainly do. It is law. It's not like people are like, well, they could choose to. No, they literally cannot be a publicly traded company and choose. Shareholders sue companies all the time. They bring lawsuits all the time to say, you're taking actions that don't benefit the company. Like, for example, SEC rule, and ideally, we need to update these rules because this one's from 1934. You have to disclose to your shareholders if you're going to take an action that does not maximize profits. You have to tell the company, we want to do something that's going to hurt our ability to provide a dividend. And in some cases, they go ahead and do it, and the outcome be damned. And other times they go to their shareholders and say, we would like I just had to vote on something for a company last year. And they said, we would like to suspend the dividend for 1 quarter so that we could offer more compensation to our workers. And it was voted down by 81%, with 25% of the shares of stock being held by workers. I resonate that for a little bit. 6% of the workers or more said, fuck the workers, we want more dividends. Now, is it easy to figure out like which ones were which? Sure. It was easy to figure out which ones were which. Which people are saying we should suspend the dividend? The rank and file workers. Which ones are saying we shouldn't? The managers who have stock portfolios. And again, in all of this, I'm not saying it's good, and I'm not saying it's right, and I'm not saying I like it. I'm saying if paying the workers a fair share produced quality results, then why aren't there more co-op companies where the owners own the company? Are there success stories where companies get bought, all the shares of stock get taken in, the shares of stock get distributed among the workers, and they turn into an amazing profitable company? Yeah, there's a door company here in Illinois that did it. Are there an equal number of stories where you buy a company, you buy back all the shares of stock, you hold the company private, you try to distribute ownership to the workforce, and they completely run it into the ground? Absolutely. Why do we have $50,000 cars? Why do people making below $150,000 a year drive a $50,000 car? Why do people buy 4-bedroom houses they know they can't afford? Do I think that companies could operate with better pricing? Sure. Look at McDonald's. McDonald's was up to what, $13 for a combo meal? And then McDonald's, their CEO realized, man, people aren't buying as much McDonald's. Industrial electrician and 4-year degree, 45 years of experience, all the way up to management, just wanting to live comfortable. I didn't ask all these companies to close and move to other countries for more profits. Okay, so you're an industrial electrician, 4-year degree, and you were only making $20 an hour. Why didn't you move somewhere with better opportunities? It's just a question. Because I made more than $20 an hour. And I know people that had your skill set that were making 32, 35, 38, 40 an hour. The electricians that wired the radiology suites at the hospitals that I was installing MRI machines in, and X-ray and CCAT and tomograms, the C-scan, C-arm, not CCAT, they were making close to 40 an hour. And I didn't say you had no skills. 20 an hour was good in 2000. Okay. If you say so. I mean, in 2000, I was 21 and retired, so. Right, but the problem, here's the thing. Why weren't you, like, let's take it a different approach. You feel that your skill set is worth more than $20 an hour, and yet in 45 years of experience, even as management, you didn't get more than $20 an hour. So, in your region of the country, you must have been, you must have tapped the pay scale. You must have been at the cap. Why did you not leave that region of the country then? Like, there is a radical difference between rural, and I don't know where you are, but there's a massive difference between like rural West Virginia and Toledo, Ohio, or Cincinnati, or I'm trying to think, like Louisville. Like, there is a cap to wages in areas because the market can't bear more. Now, as far as these companies moving to other countries for more profits, they have an obligation to their shareholders, not to their employees. I don't agree with it, but it's the law. It's also it's a known factor of capitalism. It sucks. Do I think automation and fast food chains will ever lead to lower prices for the consumer? No. Because all you're doing is you're shifting the expenditure from one lane to another. If you have McRobot that takes the place of 3 McDonald's employees, then you don't save all 3 of those employees total. You save an employee and a half, and then the contractor you pay to maintain McRobot eats the rest of the money. But what it gets you out of is paying for 3 insurances, paying for 3, like, remember, like a stupid thing, you pay, if it's January 1st and I have 5 people that work for me, I pay a dollar amount. I'm just going to say $500. I pay $500 to the state over the course of multiple months in unemployment tax for these people. Well, if this person quits and I bring on a different person, this money doesn't get reassigned to that person. I have to pay another $500 into the unemployment fund. It's why turnover can be so draining depending on the state. And there's 50 states, there's 50 sets of rules. I only know a couple of them. If I can offload work, the whole idea behind automation is that it would be cheaper in the long run. No, it's not necessarily cheaper in the long run. It's different types of expenses. Remember, when I pay you $100 a week, you don't cost me $100 a week. I pay you $100 a week, you actually cost me $106.25. Because I pay you $100. Because I pay you $100, I also have to pay the federal government $6.25 for you. I pay half of your employment tax. It's actually 7.25, but we'll leave it at this. I incur this for employment tax. So, I can pay you as an employee and pay $106.25 for you for the week, or I can pay an independent contractor $100, and my $100 to $100 on the top line is going to look like I haven't saved any money, but I've saved the $6.25. I've also saved on unemployment tax. I've also saved on any potential benefits. I've also saved on PTO. Remember, PTO, I don't give PTO to independent contractors. This is where you get W-2 employees versus 1099 contractors. Like when people contract me directly, I'm the only person they ever work with. But say I brought on another CPI expert at PGN. So you're the Boeing facility and you want a CPI guy. So you contract with PGN and it's me and another guy. I'll just say Bob. Well, when you call us and you want 40 hours, well, I'm at Disney that week. You're not getting me, but you are getting PGN and you're getting a CPI guy from PGN. Well, that's where PTO saves you on your end. Because when you have somebody on PTO, you're giving them 40 hours of pay for zero work. The other big problem is who is going to hire someone with my experience at a pay I would like to have when nowadays they hire 5 to 6 illegals for the same price? Well, I don't think it's really fair to say they're hiring 5 to 6 people for you. Because if you're an industrial engineer with a 4-year degree and 45 years of experience, they're not buying the same capability by buying 5 to 6 illegals. I understand your point. I definitely get it. I think to keep the argument more legitimate, though, I think your argument at your tier is more like this. There's you with 45 years experience, 4-year degree, and you would like $28 an hour. Or there's Billy, who's got 0 years experience. He's got a 4-year degree, and he's willing to take $19 an hour because he needs to start making payments on those college loans. Well, yeah, you're absolutely right. No one's going to hire you. The problem is, what you're not looking at is you're in a region of the world, and your job, you're assuming that your job can go to this. My argument is that it can only go to this because that's all you were ever able to leverage. Sure, I've had it happen. I was laid off and found out 4 months later they hired 5 illegals. Okay, well then the problem is your job qualifications, you were overqualified for the job you were sitting in. Because And this is a hard one for people to accept. But if an illegal can take your job, your qualifications weren't needed for the job. If an illegal can take your job, then all the pedigree you had wasn't actually needed. It was nice, but it's like I go and get a job. Not that I can work, but I go get a job. The fact that I have a teaching certificate doesn't matter if I'm working in as an ET at a hospital. If I'm working as an equipment technician, it doesn't matter. But the trick is, I would never take a job as an ET if they knew that I was a full-fledged electrical engineer with a specialty in biomedical technology. I would never take a job as an ET. I would change my resume. If I only wanted to work as an ET, I would take a lot of my pedigree off of my resume because I know damn well why would they not hire me at $19 an hour as an electrical technician or equipment technician, knowing that I know all the stuff that a full-fledged BMET does? Because then they know I'm going to do the work. And that's why I tell people you need to know your number. If you know what you're worth, then go out and get what you're worth. And I get your disgruntledness. I really do. But it sounds like you had too much pedigree for the area you were in. And it really does sound like $20 an hour was what you were going to cap at. Like, right. And the problem is you think like you know what you want and you know what you can get. Like, for example, you might not have been part of the community when I said this, but 3 years ago, I was teaching domestic violence, intimate partner violence prevention is what it's actually called. It's IPVP in my state. And so I was teaching, so you have the county, and the county sends people out on pretrial diversion, and they have to take a 26 to 52 week class. And I taught 3 days a week at 3 locations, and I charged $60 an hour. And that's what the county paid me. So the county was paying me $240 a week to teach. No. The county was paying me $300 a week to teach. So somebody came in and they said, I'll teach the classes for $25 an hour. And so they got 2 classes set up. Well, when the county sent me the contract, my new contract for the next quarter said 25. I sent it back and I said, I'm sorry, I won't be accepting this contract because you've offered it to me. My last day is X. And so every day that week, when I sent in my rosters, I said, reminder, my last day is X. Well, Saturday I taught my classes. Monday, they're calling me on the phone. And they're like, you're not at your class. I said, I'm not currently under contract with you. And they said, yes, you are. We sent you the contract and we put the new dollar amount on it. And I said, well, it's very interesting that you sent me a contract that I didn't sign. I rejected it. I'm not working for that. And the person literally said, well, I don't understand why you wouldn't work for $25 an hour. Because it was worth $60 an hour to you last week. So then the new person that they brought in absolutely could not get up to speed. And then they're calling me and they're like, we want to reoffer you your contract at 60. Said, I'm not coming in to clean up that fucking bullshit mess now. Now it's 75. If you want me to come in and do it, now it's 75. It's 75 for the rest of this quarter and next quarter, and we can go back. Companies seem to value experience less and less because the employee is older and earns more. IBM was sued for this practice. You're right. IBM was sued for the practice. The cost of cheap labor and having 5 to 6 people for the price of one is more important than experience, which then allows quality going down the drain. You're absolutely right. But remember, who cares about quality? The customer. Who does the business focus on? The shareholder. Henry Ford had a mentality. And if you've studied Henry Ford, his belief was the Henry Ford model is that if the only thing you focus on is customer satisfaction, then the only concern about your profits will be that they're too high. I get what you're saying, but what you want can never, ever, ever happen. For example, I was teaching my wife about company pensions the other day. My wife only knew about the military pension. My wife is 40. I've been married to my wife for 18 years. My wife has never had to worry about money. Since the time my wife has been 22, she's been rich. In the last couple of years, she's finally gotten to the point where that's how she'll explain it to people. People from her home will be like, oh, you made such a nice life for yourself. She's like, I didn't do shit. I married rich. It's a great answer, right? And in some ways, like I've told my wife, when other married women complain to her, all you need to look at them and say, they're like, when they say shit like, well, you only have what you have because of your husband. Don't get mad about it. Just look at them and say, yeah, no shit. I didn't marry a loser. You want nice shit? Get your husband to work harder. That's not my fault. Like, I get it. My wife didn't understand that Sears and Boeing and American and all these companies used to offer pensions. Remember, that's what the union wanted. The union wanted in-house pensions. Look at all the companies that offered in-house pensions. Where the fuck are they now? They're all closed. Well, not all of them, most of them. Sears Roebuck offering in-house pensions. Well, that means every year forward, you have your own Social Security debt. When I started at Sears at 16 years old, they were like, and do you want to contribute to the pension program? Nope. I dead ass looked my boss in the face. He's like, nope. I'm like, nope. And he gets this look. He's like, you're not interested in investing in the pension program? I said, respectfully, sir, the amount of money that I'm going to make here isn't even going to be enough for me to max my Roth IRA. I said, so no, I don't want to contribute to the pension program. And my boss was like, oh, you have a Roth IRA? I said, yeah, I have a Roth IRA. I won't make enough here to cover my car bills, my school bills, my book bills, my play bills, and cap my Roth IRA contributions. So the pension's meaningless to me. And my boss looked me in the face and said, well, what if you're still here in 10 years? I looked at my boss, and I was just a smart-ass punk 16-year-old kid. I said, sir, if I'm still here in 10 years, I'll throw my ass off the building. He kind of sat back. I said, sir, let's not pretend like this is something it's not. I'm a high school student who's in college. I need book money, tuition money. I gave you my schedule. I will be the hardest worker you have ever seen the hours I'm here. The hours I'm not here, Sears existed long before me. And I actually said, and Sears will exist long after me. Well, it really didn't. I'm not contributing to your pension program because I'm not going to be here for 45 years. But if you think back to the Sears or the Kmart or the Venture or the Ace Hardware, there were people who no shit worked there. They'd been there for 35 years. And they were getting ready to retire and get their pension. But their pension didn't start until retirement age. 55, I think, was the normal pension. But now you got people living to 80, 90 years old. Shit, man. The Air Force knows that I'm going to cost them. Hold on. Let me just give you a quick number. Let's just see how much I'm going to cost the Air Force, because I'm the city of Detroit, man. I ain't dying. Let's keep it. Let's say I don't go any older than my father. I die at the same age my father is. There's somebody in an Air Force bean counter room right now that says, damn it, Captain Jalon is going to cost us another $2.5 million in pension before he dies. Keep giving me that money, folks. That's why the military did away with the 50% 20-year pension. They can't afford it. People used to die at 60. 74, 75 is the average age of death for men. Now, you're right. The average age, absolutely. I'm the city of Detroit, man. I plan on living to 102. I plan on living as long as possible. My living will be a giant fuck you to the government. My living will, when I die and I'm in a deathbed, will be keep my ass alive as long as possible. Babylon burning. There you go. If I want to be kept alive as long as possible at the taxpayer's expense, fuck them. Your father is in a medically induced coma. He has zero chance of survival. Dad's wishes are keep him alive. The only way you can end him is if his hands die, then you can end him. See, I get that people are pissed. I guess I'm too old-fashioned. I saw my father and grandfather work 40 hours a week and bring up 2 children, had a home and 2 cars. My world started to fall apart when Reagan took office and the middle class at the time went to hell. That's when companies started going overseas. Now America is bitching about China. You're right. And you know what? If you want to know where America went sideways, it was 1972 when we went off the silver standard, or the gold standard, whichever one we were on at the time, and we went to fiat currency. This 90% reserve or this 90% fractional lending, when you're on the gold standard, I give the bank $100,000 on the gold standard. The bank can reasonably lend out about $50,000 more, and that's about it. Because the bank has to have, remember, back in the day, well, let me take a quick break and then we'll jump into this one. Okay, so, well, no, trickle down economics works. The problem is people don't understand what trickle down economics is supposed to do, so they keep saying it doesn't work. But trickle down economics works the way it's intended to work. Except you're expecting trickle down economics to give everybody a yacht, and it's never been designed to do that. Anyway, when you're on a hard currency system. So this is a 1 ounce silver coin. This is what you used to be able to exchange money for. I have somewhere in one of the, I looked for it real quick. I don't know where I slipped the envelope. It's in one of the safes. I have silver certificates. Yeah, I was only popping back real quick and then I realized. When a bank is based on hard currency, I give the bank 100,000 silver coins or 100,000 silverbacks. The bank can really only get away with loaning out 50,000 of them. Because if I show up tomorrow and I say, hey, I need 75,000 of my coins back or 75,000 of my silverbacks back, the bank's going to say, shit, we don't have it. Now remember, this is a little bit more complicated. Because I give the bank 100,000 on the premise that they're going to give me 1%. Now, how does the bank earn that 1%? Well, that's because you borrowed 50,000 coins at 5%. So your repayments are filling up the vault again and putting a little bit on top. So the bank teller can get paid, the security guard can get paid, the manager of the bank can get paid. And that's why sometimes you have fees, right? That's why you have penalties. And again, I don't agree with this, but I don't think you should get penalized $35 for an overdraft fee. But I understand why they do it, because they need to make money. But when you're on this credit fractional lending thing, I give the bank 100K. The bank can lend out 90 of that. The bank only has to retain 10% because the bank is really the middleman canceling this debt in exchange for this debt. Like over here. Be like, hey, bank, I gave you $100,000. Yeah. Okay. Bank, you have $100,000 of my money. Yeah. I need you to tell the credit card company they can have 3,000 of that 100,000. Okay, we'll do that. Notice I never take the money out of the bank. The bank just sends over to the credit card company. Yeah. Or the bank is my credit card company. Well, why do banks like credit cards? So here's why banks like credit cards. I go to Disney and I buy $2,000 worth of tickets from Disney. And because Disney wants to sell $2,000 worth of tickets, Disney says, hey, Jay wants to buy, or this is the bank, and this is me. And I put $10,000 into the bank, and I say to Disney, hey, I'd like to buy $2,000 worth of tickets, and I want to buy it on this credit card. And Disney says, good deal. So Disney sends me tickets. Disney also sends $36 to the bank, the processing fee. At the end of the month, Disney says, Mr. Jalan, you owe us $2,000. I'm sorry. The bank sent the balance to Disney. At the end of the month, the bank says to me, Mr. Jalan, you owe us $2,000 because we gave Disney $2,000 for you. And you're like, but you really didn't. You didn't really give them $2,000. Well, what do you mean? You got a processing fee, but I still owe you $2,000. Oh, because you have to pay your own processing fee. Got it. Here's your $2,000. Not only does my bank say thank you, my bank gives me $10 because they give me 5% back on my purchases. We live in a world where the money doesn't mean anything. You worked Campbell Soup Plants, Mrs. Paul's, NG, Four Shirt Factories, Crown, Cork and Seal, Green Giant, Goddard Space Flight Center, and that's not counting at least the 20 small electrical companies had to complete with the legals for. So kind of pissed over corporate America. Well, NG, you couldn't have run into illegals. You didn't lose your job at NG for illegals. As a CRO for the military, we don't tolerate illegals at all. If you have illegals working for you, you become ineligible for contracts. A lot of those other ones, I could see that. I could see that. But, you know, it's kind of like, unfortunately for some people, a lot of people have to... Yeah, the illegals are the small electrical companies. A lot of people need to live by the old famous adage, don't hate the player, hate the game. If you want to fix the economy in America, the very first thing you need to do is put us back on a hard currency. That's almost impossible to do. I saw somebody say America needs to be refounded. Yeah. The problem is a lot of these changes happened because it's what the people wanted. But when you have the ignorant, unwashed masses making decisions, like Asmongold said on his stream, not everybody should have a vote because not everybody should be making decisions. And I agree with him. The problem is he probably wouldn't be one of the people that made the cut to make the decisions. And that's maybe okay. But people said, we need more accessibility to funds. Look at what that did. People always want to talk about minimum wage not keeping track. Back in my grandfather's day, hell, even in my father's day, he could afford to buy hard currency every week. He made more than to buy a unit of the hard currency that our economy was based on. Well, people are mad now because they can't get a mortgage. Well, what happened to prices? And it's simple. Supply, demand, price. Well, when the supply of houses is high and the demand is high, the price goes to whatever the market will bear. When the supply is high, but the demand is neutral, The price cannot stay high. The price has to come down to meet demand. The problem was people wanted more access to homes. So what they did is they kept the supply the same and the demand went through the roof. Because the demand went through the roof because the accessibility went through the roof. So what happened to the price? Why does a house cost so much? Because you're competing against 6 people that are all bidding over market value. I think it is bullshit. You want to talk about changing things that don't work, and then I got to get out of here. You want to talk about things that don't work. Something that absolutely does not work. If you list your house for $299, and I call and I say full market value, that should be the end of the discussion. It should be illegal for you to get 3 full market value offers on your house and then start to play the game of rejecting them to see who will bid up. You listed it for $299.9. I made a full market value offer. Mine's the first one in. That's it. Done. Like I said, about 4 years ago, there was a house my wife wanted to buy because we were going to stay here. Now we're not staying here. House was $300,000. Everything we wanted in a house. Main level. Laundry room was on the main level. Master bedroom was on the main level. And at that point, I don't give a shit. The kids can have the basement, whatever. It had a pool. Had a nice concrete deck I could have put a hot tub on. Everything was good. I bid full market value. My real estate agent said they've gotten a bunch of full market value bids. I said, I will not bid above full market value. 2 people walked the price of the house up from $299.9 to $349.9. They paid $50,000 over asking price. That's your problem. Supply and demand drives price. Anyway, I'm going to get out of here. I will be back on Friday for more of these shenanigans.
I wonder if the organic meat sack that runs this channel knows a lot of these sponsors don't sponsor us anymore.
They were longtime sponsors. The credits are fine.
Do we get paid? Is any of this sponsorship money for Gail, Daisy, the Chaos Fund?
You are a figment of Jalan's imagination. I don't think you will be getting paid.